Good evening, board. I'm back. So we are back tonight for part 2 of our study to receive the findings and outcomes from the study. And so we have back with us Dr. Seversky and Doug Exley with us. They have their portion of the study all set and have a series of options and detailed information they'd like to share. So with that being said, I just want to turn the floor over to them.
First of all, thanks to the public for coming. We're just two old superintendents, so it's not comfortable for us to... Well, wait, you guys are here. Well, okay. Well, so you're who you're talking to. Here's what I got. We're not, as two old superintendents, we're not comfortable with having our back to our you're not the public, okay? So tonight's a workshop of the board. Okay? And the document we're going through is not a public document. It's our work draft. It belongs to SES still simply because it's not finished yet. In fact, we found a couple of errors, just typos, and also a couple of, we're just double checking stuff. So with that, accept our apologies for our back, okay? On the other hand, next Thursday, 23rd, at 7 o'clock, there's a community meeting where we'll present the findings and hope to see you. Okay? You're welcome. Sorry, guys. Thanks. I feel bad. You don't spend all these years doing that. Anyway, so thanks for having us back. And you heard what I just said. This is our work document that we choose simply because we learned a long time ago that we don't walk on water and we don't read minds. And we don't live here. This is your community. It's your kids. It's your money. So however we do this with this work draft, because it hasn't been transmitted yet to you. It will be soon, in a couple of days, to you, the board. And then from there, you post it to the public. But we'd like to share and get some insights and some thoughts about the work we've done so far. We did that this afternoon in a work session with Mathis and the administrative team. So we got, to double check some things that we wanted to. Okay? With that. If you remember, you commissioned us to help answer the question, are there options that might provide more cost-effective ways or patterns to organize how the pre-K through 12 program is implemented and delivered over the next 3 years? And if you remember, and that's why we accepted your invitation, one of the main reasons is that you had no preconceived notions of how to answer that question. And when we met you that first night, we told you we will not work with a district that already has preconceived notions of what the findings should be. What do you need us for? So that's important. You really ask the question in a good stewardship way, in a diligent way, might there be other scenarios or ideas that allow us to provide the program to the children of the community with cost effectiveness, and you're also dealing with some challenges, the potential with regard to the revenue flows of sales tax, as well as the power plant, as well as just the cost of doing business. So with that, and when we met that first night, that was an important step for us. We always like to meet the people and learn from people. We did that planning for the future workshop, if you remember. And one of the reasons we do that, not just because it sounds neat or whatever, no, we thought of a way where we can learn the values and the points of view of the people who are hiring us. This is your district. You've been elected to be board members. So we got to get an idea of values of how you look at this stuff. So that night that we spent a couple of hours with you helped us do that. In fact, if you turn to Roman numeral 3 in the preface, that's the work you did that night. Right. Okay? You rank ordered a series of key questions, data topics that you believe that you, along with your community, would need to discuss, answer, however you want to look at it, as you look at maybe implementing some ideas with regard to cost effectiveness and delivering the program. We use this to guide how and with how we did the study, in the sense of making sure we made sure we held up a mirror to all kinds of data that really could address these 17 items. That's what was in it for us. We would suggest, as we did that night, this list can be a good tool for you and your community, along with your staff, as you look at the study, as you look at the ideas, okay? Teachers call it a rubric. Usually, it's just a way how to talk about the data using these 17 priorities. Okay, however you want to look at it. You did that, and we thank you for that. Doug?
Sure. If you turn the page to the table of contents, what I'd like to do is I'm just going to take a minute, walk through the table of contents so you can just see the format and how we lay it out, so it'll just help you as you're going through it. And then I'm going to tie some of that into the way we're going to review the study tonight and what we think might be some helpful ideas for you as you share it with your public. So if you take a look at the table, what Paul just talked about was the planning of the plan. You see the way that we set up the study. We come back, start with the purpose of the study, and then we get into our methodology, the way that we go about gathering the information and what we do to prepare the study for you. Then as you go through it, you can see we have the findings, we have the pupil capacity, which of course is really, it's a big issue for you as you look at what there is in the buildings and what type of capacity there is. And we break that down very specifically throughout the document. And when we get into the scenarios, you see very clearly how that pupil capacity impacts the implications of each of those scenario options that we set forth. So you can see there under pupil capacity analysis what we have there. Then, of course, we have the all-important enrollment projection study, which as we've gone through and as you've seen, that spells a pretty significant decrease over the 3 to 5 years coming out. After that, what we do is we look at what we call findings, inferences, and observations based on our visits. This is where we take the information not only that we've gathered data-wise, but also as we spend time in each one of your buildings. So we use the data information, and then every bit as important for us as we go through a project like this is getting into your schools. So we're not just sitting back gathering the information and then sending it on to you. We're gathering the information and looking and see how does it fit within your schools, and how does the way that your schools are run, how does that impact the data that we see and set forth to you. So as we look at those from 32 through 39, you can see we have all kinds of things that are there. They're charted out. There's information from the distance between the schools to ideas about pre-K, the sites, teacher days, student times, shared staff, FTE, all of those that are important issues as you're looking at what you're dealing with here at Wayne. Then if you go on to the next page of the table, just concluding that part to 41, you can see we have an inventory, there's bus run data, and then some other inferences and observations. Then we look at what we see as options. And as we talk about the options, we're going to review them as what we call doable options. So we're not looking at what we believe would be hypothetical, where maybe we would present to you 15 or 20 options that might fill the study up more, but they really wouldn't be something that would work for you. So we've got 5 major doable options that are there, and we'll go through those and see exactly how they're laid out. Then as you can see, what we have is we have some different opportunities and challenges that are part of those. And in the end, what we did is we took the scenarios, because this part's obviously very important. We took each of the scenarios and then costed them out so that you could see with scenario A, what does this mean? What are the cost factors that are involved with that? And that involves everything from the staffing and the implications and the buildings, and because we don't want to leave anything out, we factored in how much money it would cost if you were to keep one of the buildings or whatever open. So that's in there also, and we'll show how that works. So that's how the document's laid out. When we go to these scenarios, what we'd like to talk to you about is looking at the format of the way the scenarios are set up and the way the study's set up to use it as a tool. So in effect, what we'd like to do is to model using the scenarios, discussing the scenarios, and then as you have questions, to be able to go back into the document, as you might with your public, to show, okay, that particular question, that's part of this part of the analysis. Let's look at that to see how it impacts the scenario. Rather than us starting at the beginning and working our way through all of these, we're going to go to the end game and then kind of come backwards to some of it. But before we do that, we thought that there were 2 key things that we wanted to point out that we really felt were strong implications for your flexibility and your process as you look at how you can deal with some of these issues. So if you would take a look at page 46, there's two things here that I'd like to point out before we get into the scenarios. On page 46, you can see that what we've done is that we've highlighted that statement that's towards the bottom of the checks. These are under inferences and observations. So this would come after these particular findings that we have. We've set forth some observations as we do throughout the study. In this case, what you can see is that we've graded in that we feel are very important with two key provisions in your new contract for 2015 to 2018. And so if you turn the page to 47, I'll just briefly review the first one. First one's in Article 11, Section E. It deals with your workday provisions. And in your workday provisions, what the contract language states is that you have a workday that consists of 7 hours for staff, and you have a duty-free lunch, and then within that time frame, they have a prep period. Now, on the face of it, this may not sound like any monumental information to you, but what we often come across as we're dealing with these types of situations is you have contracts that will very clearly stipulate the amount of time and the amount of sections that staff can teach. And so what it can do is it can lock you into utilization of your staff that may not let you be as flexible as you want to be. In your particular case here at Wayne, you have it laid out as a daily block of time. So minus the half hour, minus the prep, the staff are there to instruct students. This is extremely powerful information because of all the different research we know that's out there. Probably the most important we have is that we know that teacher time with students is the greatest indicator for success of students. So one of the things that you really want to be looking at and your administrative team's looking at, how can we maximize our instructional time with students? What's the best way to deliver that? We point this out to the board because what you have here is a very flexible provision that allows you and your leadership teams to examine what are the best ways for us to deploy our staff. This becomes really clear as you look at some of the information in the study where we actually chart out, we talk about deployment of staff and looking at trying to maximize your staff with students. And we've charted that out for you so you can see the actual percentages in the elementary, in the middle, in the high school, and how that's working for you now and how that may be improved in the future. A key provision. The second part that I'd like to point out to you is that if you go down a little bit here, the second major provision towards the middle of page 47, this is Section F, teacher. It's under teacher assignments, and it's item 5, master schedule changes. This is extremely important for you as you look at how you're going to meet the challenges of the future and how you're going to set up your programs for students. Under your previous contracts, you had to carry forward. This was specific to the language in your contract. And I would imagine you're obviously aware of this, but it's worth noting. Your previous year's contracts had to be carried forth in force into the next school year. So the contract or the master schedule that you had in, say, 2011, 2012 had to basically be in place in 2012 and 2013. Now, regardless if you decided, well, we want to do something different with block scheduling, or we want to move to a more traditional program, or we want to do semestered programming, basically you were stopped from doing that because you had to follow the schedule that had come in the previous years. That carried forward. The language was very specific about that. In your new contract, that language sunsets this school year in 2015-2016. The language goes away, it is no longer in force. So from 15-16 forward, you now have the flexibility, your administrative team has the flexibility to examine how you're going to deploy staff and how you're going to look at the programming and the implications that the master schedule has for that. The key point of this is, as any administrative team knows, the master schedule is a technical tool to determine time and space where students and staff are. It should not drive what the vision of your program is for your kids. Under your old language, in effect, your master schedule drove your program vision. So finally what's happened is you've reversed that, and now it's going to be, what's our program vision? What do we want for kids? And how does the master schedule set that up with time and space and where people go? I can't overemphasize it enough. It's a monumental change for you as you look forward to some of the problems that you have to deal with. We just felt up front that that was something that really needed to be noted, because all of the other things that we're working on, you'll see how the pieces fit, but without those two key parts in your contract, you could have been trying to do a lot of different things, and then underneath that, a lot of that could have been blocked based upon that language. So that's gone away. So we wanted to note that.
Even though we started with that, because it is that important, it will, in our opinion, how you work together collaboratively with your folks on those two clauses, in our opinion, is will have generations of impact on your program and how you deliver it, okay? But saying that, this is a program delivery study. This is not contract law or, labor study. It is not, okay? In fact, we honestly looked at your study question, which you noticed and you said, can we more cost effectively? And that doesn't necessarily mean that any money you save automatically comes off the tax rate. That's not what the mission you told us. Where could we do better for kids with the resources we already have? Which some of it could be allocated, as your wisdom as the board, for added or different programming, and or, there's reality here, and or help lessen or mitigate the tax rate. So it's not all one or the other. And you'll see that when you, at your leisure, go through this along with your community. Not to birdwalk, but for example, you have UPK that you now contract out. In the study, we addressed that. There's another way to do it, but it would cost about $80,000 more. That you would need to weigh as a board of what's best for kids. Okay, so not all of this is, $50 here or $100,000 here. It's also, could we do differently and actually give more for our children with the resources that already exist? That's just a quick example. So,
good point.
Yeah.
Before we, yes,
I have a question. Based on those things that are in our contract, there's also, nice, it has some definitions for the secondary teaching load. We have to abide by those.
No.
Or the maximum number of students.
No.
No.
If it's
No and no.
not
No
if it's
and
a
no.
state ed, right? Then we
No,
don't.
not at all. That's
No.
your prerogative as a Board of Education.
No. No. Now what I would say is that just to give you an example, typically what you tend to see if you're dealing with a normal, an 8 period day, oftentimes what you'll see if a teacher's doing, I'm going to say the height. Yeah, okay.
Let's wait for that. We actually model.
Yeah, we do show
Let's
that.
wait.
That's a good point.
Let's not lose that.
I'm just aware of them
We're
because
actually
I've
going to
dealt with them before, so
apply.
that's all I was asking.
We're actually going to apply
Yeah, I don't want
a
to jump.
suggested
I don't want
way
to
to
jump
look
that.
at it.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's just a suggestion. You need to understand, there are no recommendations in the study. You've asked us to help answer that question. We have a lot of suggestions. We hold up a mirror to a lot of data. Okay? And it's real data. It's transparent. Remember that one of the premises? It's all transparent data. You don't need one of these to understand it. Nothing wrong with this, but really, you don't. It's not, I shouldn't joke, I shouldn't say nuclear science given the nuclear plant,
No,
but it's not nuclear science.
Brain.
It's like Grandma used to say,
Brain surgery.
good common sense, okay? Seriously. And I'm not belittling it or making light at all. So, and we hold up a mirror to a lot of data that it's transparent. And also, as you remember, one of the premises, when we do studies, everybody has the same information. There's no private executive summary for Mathis or you or the staff. It's, here it is. And we'll talk more about that, what happens next Thursday on the 23rd. Because everybody, in order to have meaningful, engaged discussion, really everybody's got to have the same information. How do you not do that? Unless everybody has the same source and data to talk from. Okay?
One last prelude before we get to the scenarios, and this was something we shared this in some different manners with your administrative team this afternoon. But what I'd like to say is that Paul and I recently finished a major study down on Long Island, and on Long Island, what they were dealing with down there, quite frankly, is they've got enrollment that's just banging through the roof. Kids coming in like crazy. They're looking at, they've got to do a monster building project to try and deal with all the new kids coming in. And you know, there's a lot of excitement coming from that, you know, all the students, you know, building and all of that. And we wish that's what we were dealing with here, but we're not. What we're dealing with here is looking at trends that show declining enrollment and trends that would show less funding. So in dealing with that, there's a lot of emotionalism that's involved with that. I've been involved in that type of scenario before, and I know what it's like. I know what it's like when you're having to talk about situations that, you know, we're in a tough spot, we have less funds, we have less kids long term. As you know from your demographics look, so, you know, a little tough because of your population and some of the age of your population. So those things together are putting you in a tough spot, and what you folks have done is a wonderful thing, that you said, look, let's get information, let's get data, let's get this stuff so we can look at it and be able to talk about it and share it with our public. In that regard, what we would suggest as you're dealing with this is that you look at the data, look at the study, look at the information, and share with your public that what you're trying to do is to examine the data, examine the study, and see what's the best direction forward to go. A lot of people, as you know, are going to want to know what position you're advocating. You know, which side are you on? Where do you fall with this? And what we would suggest as a board in dealing with something like this, it's even more important to take a step back, assume that statesman-like role, and say, you know, I don't have a particular opinion. What I have is information. It's a lot of information. And what we as a board are going to do, we're going to go through it, we're going to examine it, we're going to make sure you get all the same information that we have, and then together, we're going to do our job to make a responsible decision. And I say that, and I think it's worth saying, because we have worked in places where we've done this type of thing, and what's happened is certain board members have advocated for a position, other board members have advocated for another position, and before they can even get to what the heart of the matter is, there's a lot of polarization that's going on with the board and the community. And you people, you're the leaders of your district, you're the people that the community looks towards for guidance and understanding. So the more you can say, we're going to look at this, we're going to figure it out, we're going to work on it together, the better prospect we would suggest you have that comes to a long-term solution that's going to be in everybody's best interest.
Now, eventually, yeah, you're going to have to wrestle with it, but that's your timeline, your suggestion. As you know, there's one more tool after next Thursday that we help you with. Next Thursday we present, as you know, thanks to Mathis and your blessing, we're going to present the findings to your staff. You're the employer of that staff, and if you remember, out of respect, we're going to present to those who wish to come to a meeting to have the findings presented to them respectfully. And then that evening at 7 o'clock, for any and all the community who want to come, it's not a board meeting, it's where we present the findings of the study. All right? And how we do that, we don't do PowerPoints, whatever. Literally, people will receive the study to take home. There's a lot here. Again, good common sense, not overly complicated, really, but there's a lot there. And it's about your kids. So you want people to take it home and look at it, think about it, talk to their neighbor, talk to Uncle Harry, whatever, okay? And have questions and discussion together. In the fall, because over the summer, we'll discuss that later on, part of our approach that we've helped schools with good success with, we hold a community focus group meeting. We'll talk more about that, what that means later on. After that meeting, we'll give details a little later as we end the evening. And after that community focus group that we host, of folks that you designate who are on this community focus group, we'll do a report of their work. And once you get that, you'll have all the tools. You'll have the 2 baseline studies, pupil capacity, enrollment, this major study, plus you have the other piece with Rick, just looking at financial, this program piece, and a microcosm of the stakeholders of your community. Very diverse, that are representative as you see it for your community, will have worked together for a good 6-7 hours together on the data. Not listening to us, listening to each other, okay? and we'll give you that report. Once you get that final tool, it's time for guest outsiders to go home. It really now becomes a family discussion. And that's where, hopefully you'll still be statesmen, but that's really where you, along with your superintendent, your administrative staff, and your staff, now's the time to, okay, what are we going to do if anything? All right? So there's a point where it's time. That's kind of what the time is. But as Doug says, between now and then, continue to be that statesman-like thing until really the findings are presented and your public has time to ruminate, think about. And yeah, you will. At the grocery store, at the nice place we just went to. I'm doing a commercial, but it was really good.
Cranberry Creek.
Cranberry Creek. So you go to Cranberry Creek and you run into somebody and they'll bend your ear and you keep eating your moose pie and you listen and really, you gotta listen. It's very important, as you know, as board members. So, enough of that, I guess.
Well, and just as we get to serious, I have to interject. Mathis knows this, so I have to just say very quickly, because Paul keeps saying, you know, we on the 23rd, and I will be there on the focus group, but I have to apologize, and I told Mathis about 9 months ago, my wife and I set our vacation, and it was set up for this coming 16th to the 24th. Then we got the dates for the 23rd. I went to my wife and I explained, you know, look, I'm sorry, I have to be so-and-so, and my wife looked me in the eyes and she said, for 15 years you missed anniversaries, you missed birthdays, you missed family get-togethers. She said, no.
It's down home and you'll see how it
We
goes.
like doing it together, but I just wanted to let you know that it'll just be Paul, but I will be back on the focus group. So I just wanted you to hear that from me, so all of a sudden it's like, well, geez, you know,
We're done.
where'd he take off?
He's having dinner.
I'll be away.
We'll make sure we cut your pay.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl.
So, what we're going to do, we're going to start talking about the options and then model how you might, in other words, you may have questions like, gee, Paul, like class size or whatever. We'll use the body, much like we would suggest you would use, along with staff and your community, to, like, what's the answer to that? It's in here. It really is, all right? So we'll kind of model that through, and again, no dogs and ponies here, so if you have a question to go along, say, Paul, Doug, that's what this is. This is a workshop to look over this unpublished draft of our work, so we can put some finishing touches on it, and we'll get it out by Wednesday, so it's to your public on the website by Thursday, hopefully, and not hopefully, but probably by Wednesday, but Thursday, and then everybody will have it in digital form for a whole week, and then next, your PR folks will have some inviting your public to this. Well, it's just a community meeting. It's not a time to get on a soapbox. It's like Paul's going to be there to present the findings, not advocate. See, the skin in it for us is not what you end up doing. If we can turn to each other and turn to you, frankly, and say, did this help you? And we hope the answer is yes. Then that's the skin in it for us. What you finally decide to do, your business. We will never tell you what we think you ought to do. Ever. Not your community, your kids, your money. Be out of place for us to do that. All right? So.
Paul, was there
Yes.
anything that you needed that you were not able to ascertain or find to be able to
No.
complete?
Everybody
Was
great.
there no puzzle
No.
piece was missing?
No. Not at all.
No, people were really good.
People are really good.
Very helpful.
I just didn't know if there was a piece of data that just could not be
Oh,
ascertained.
no, because we wouldn't allow it to not to be. No, really, what can I say? You know, it's like,
We're persistent, we keep calling.
you don't spend 90 years as superintendent and administrator saying, oh, I don't know if I should ask for that.
No, not
Okay.
that somebody would
Okay.
withhold it, just
All
that
right.
it just wasn't
No, we
Thanks.
available.
got it, we got it.
No, everybody's just wonderful.
And what we try to
Serious.
do, and we did it this afternoon with the leadership team, because it's a draft, we did have a couple parts where we had some questions on if we were right with some of the information. So we did give it back. Mathis was checking, some other people are checking, just making sure that the numbers were correct regarding some staffing questions.
Okay.
Right.
But no, we got everything.
Okay.
that we needed.
Yeah.
It's great.
Okay? Now, so, let's turn to page 53.
I'm so happy.
And this section is called Some Possible Options. Now, please understand, all of these, Doug referred to it earlier. We do recommend and suggest that all of these options, A through E, are doable. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, first, you don't have to build anything or re-renovate or any of that. Because that wasn't on the table. Like, gee, And we've been in districts. We did one major district this fall. Don't be afraid that if it might mean we have to build a whole new building or whatever, that's okay, we're open to that. That wasn't your direction, like, this is what we have, could we do differently with what we have, right? To be cost, that's what we did. Because we could have made this thicker, but what's good is hypothetical. What good is it? Okay? So, now that's not to say that these 5 individual ones could be adapted a little bit. And we'll explain what that means in a minute, all right? When we get to a couple. But we are pretty confident these 5 they're about it for doable without major renovation, major anything like that at all.
Yeah, it's all within.
All right. It's within what you've got.
Okay.
All right? Okay. You ever watch HG Home and Garden TV and somebody wants that vegetable sink and they tell them, well, you can have that, but it's going to cost you like 30 grand to get the water there. None of these ideas have any of that kind of hassle. You get what I mean? All right. So, page 53. So some of the things that we already talked about, we hold up a mirror. That's our job. No value judgment. Here's the mirror, here's your data. Some of the data you may like, some of the data, not just you, but others may not like. It's like I look in the mirror around April 1, and I look and I said, how much ice cream, Paul, did you eat this winter? I don't like what I see. Then I start working outside and I get back to my summer weight. Not to be facetious, but some of the data, maybe uncomfortable, you don't like it. It's real data, unmanipulated, untouched. Now, some ideas, page 54. And we just talked about this, that we list and describe some building use scenarios that singly or in combination, all right? That there might be a piece of B that, boy, if we could combine that with D, that might be it. We hope you do that. Why? Because in the end, you gotta own this, not us. Whatever you choose to do with you, not us. Okay. So saying that, we also recommend, though, that you continue your practice of reviewing your instructional opportunities and efficiencies that you can achieve, that you already do achieve, through your BOCES. The BOCES consortium model is a model that is the country's jealous of the model. It's worked well since 1948, and it's just an outstanding way that consortium districts can help each other do better for kids. So that's ingrained here, that your normal practice of, gee, could we partner? Could we, you continue doing that, all right? As we continue down page 54, we do recommend for long-range planning. Because we looked at your region, we looked at your demographic, we looked at the demographic of schools around you. We would suggest that you may want to have very preliminary, what if cup of coffee meetings with boards of education of neighboring districts. You might want to do that sometime. Why? You might want to have a discussion about what might be some of the opportunities and challenges of 2 or more neighboring districts exploring possible school district reorganization. It may open up avenues and ideas about long-term program quality and financial stability, not only of Wayne, but maybe of 1 or more school districts around you. Enough said. You can say, thanks a lot, nah, or you can say, let's think about it. It's your business. But we really think there's some potential opportunities, one, because we work for you, selfishly for your district, but also, in all honesty, because we are educators and altruistic, that may be beneficial for Wayne and 1 or more of your neighboring school districts. So, every one of these scenarios allow you to deliver your program with reduced costs. Every one of them. All right? And how we do this is the guiding principle that allows us to do that is your data about class size goals. It's very important. In fact, we're very conservative. You're going to hear that word a lot tonight, so don't be mad at me. Everything you see is very conservative. One, we didn't survive 80-some years as superintendents by shooting from the hip on promising the world about money either way, savings or cost. because it's public money, and nobody, we're good, you know, telling the future exact, you're not gonna find anybody to do that. So you gotta make sure you're prudent and diligent when you suggest things to people. So that's what we've done here, all right? So as you'll see when we get to the real examples, most of the identified savings primarily have to do with delivering the class section, grade level sections within your values in K through 6 as well as 7 through 12, all right? And from using fewer buildings. There's a whole other part of your program. There's the instructional support part of your program, including certified assistants and civil service aides, as well as a lot of other certificated people like speech folks, language folks, all those folks, health folks, PE folks. We don't go there, not because we're lazy, quite the opposite. To go there would be very presumptuous as guest outsiders. That's really program offerings. Follow that? In other words, you may have fewer kids. That doesn't necessarily mean that you would necessarily reduce your language teachers because there are other opportunities. Gee, fewer kids, Could we, for example, use that existing resource to start providing even more language opportunities starting as early as Part 100? You can start Part 100 rules, you know, all the things you got to do for kids before they graduate. You have the right to start that as a board in grade 5. Can you imagine that? So you got fewer enrollments, but you may want to reutilize your foreign language folks to start providing Part 100, you know, the language requirement, as early as grade 5. And what would happen is, you likely, if you did do that, you would start having children taking year 1 of language in grade 7 because you'd already done the seat time. You see how that's really your domain? We don't have a right to say, well, because of this enrollment, you don't need these people. No. That's your job, because you could utilize those people to enhance. Remember we said earlier, it's not all about savings, but it's how using what you have now to give more for the children of your district. And that sounds, isn't that nice? But what we've learned in doing these studies is that many communities, even those communities very focused on property taxes, more often than not, folks are very interested in, you mean if you did this, our kids could get more for the same dollar I'm giving you? And if that answer is yes, which often it is, in the districts we do, communities say, and you know why? Because a lot has changed in our culture. Even though it's America, taxes and all that. On the other hand, not to be philosophical, but think of what's left as a cultural institution in our society. Look at the role of churches that used to be and what is now. Look at the role of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. What's one institution that's kind of, in all our warts and not, is kind of hung around? Public education. You got it. And the folks on the street, with or without kids like me, I'm an empty nester, and what you name, in our opinion, they really understand that this is like, this is important stuff for our community and the future. Okay, enough said, but we find that from all kinds of communities. There's this like, this is we got to pay attention to this. Okay, so anyway, so we do that. On page 55, the guiding value for the whole study are your class size goals. We do not change them. We don't even suggest you should. That's your business. Could you? Your business. You do it either way. Right now, your class size goals for K-3 is delivering the program with no more than 19 children in a class K through 3. Okay? We could, but we're not going to. If you, Baptists could do this, you can compare and contrast your neighboring schools. We don't think it's important. Who cares next door? What's important for you? But if you did a comparison, it might be eye-opening. You might be more cutting edge than you think you are. All right? Even though you are cutting edge. Your 4 through 12 is 25. We do not change that. That's what we go with. All right? Okay. So, The scenarios we suggest to you are not listed in any priority order, and no advocacy, not our job. Okay? That's the italics on page 55. The value judgment that balances how the scenario options might best serve your pupils and how the scenario options might best reduce operating expenditures must rest with you. This is where, remember I said eventually you gotta stop being statesman, not stop, but you gotta put some action to the statesman. That's whose job it is, okay? You, the elected, eventually. So, that's really important to make sure that there's a clear understanding of that. So,
Well, and I just want to, just before we move to that, at the top of the page with the FTE costs.
thanks, yeah.
Sure. As you look at the top of the FTEs, what we're doing is we're looking at average costs of administrators, faculty, so that you can see what that's there, and you can see the numbers that we used for the elementary and secondary. And what we did there, because we think it's extremely important, is that when you're looking at those numbers that are at the top of 55, those numbers are all inclusive. So it's not, just base or whatever, and then, all that other stuff is off to the side. So when we figure out the savings, those are the averages that we're using. So when you look at the scenarios, that's what you're gonna see for the administrators, for the secondary staff, for the elementary staff. Those are the numbers.
Learn that from Mr. Stoddard in my first superintendency. He came to every annual meeting, and he was there like clockwork. Till one year he was sick, and I missed him. And he always say, Paul, just tell me what it costs. Don't tell me it's the salary and the fringe. What's it cost? Okay? So we bring that to the table here. This is all inclusive. On average, you take all of those costs, divide by the number of FT at that level, and that's your average cost in this system. No names, no whatever. Now please understand, down the road, and you'll see we take that into account, if and when it's time, there might be some staff changes. In all likelihood, your savings might be less than average. Well, you know why, because first in, first out if you did excess staff. So we have to take that into account, and we do that in our numbers. But not always, it depends. Who retired, you just don't know. Just so you know, never conservative.
Is the average cost per FTE different because of seniority between the elementary and secondary?
Well, not necessarily. In fact, actually, that's a good question. You know the best way to answer that? We didn't set this up. Remember we said we're going to use the data? Okay. If you would go to, the best way to answer that, and I like it because it's a chart, I like pictures. If you look at, page 39, turn to page 39, and you'll see the reason why. What we do in this chart, we ask the district to give us 4 years worth of data, page 39 at the top, of the numbers of FTE staff who left the district for all reasons except reductions in force. You've had, in those 4 years, you had only 7 pre-K through 6 certified teachers leave, but notice you had 14 grades 7 through 12. There's your answer. You've had, right? And you know the magic of breakage. Don't get me wrong, you're not cheap about it, but if someone of higher rate leaves, one of the built-in ways to deal with cost is breakage. Never spend your breakage. It's one of the best ways to moderate your budget. So there's your answer. You've had more turnover at the secondary level where you've had the opportunity to replace folks, not necessarily with less quality, but probably in all likelihood, probably less cost. How's that? See how you can use this? Okay, thank you, Ron. Okay, that was a good one.
So Paul, when you say everything, you mean salary, benefits,
Everything.
TRS,
Everything.
Yes.
comp,
Everything.
payments to
Everything.
Social Security,
Anything at all.
everything.
Everything
Okay.
that's in there.
That's all.
Everything.
Okay.
People want to know that. Like, what is it? It is what it is.
That's your cost.
People want to know what it is. And that's how it's the most accurate way. And now, down the road, if you choose 1 or 2 options, you're going to turn to your team. You're going to be very specific. Who might be, what positions might be affected, and what would be the real cost for those. That's down the road, once you pick 1 or 2 to really analyze. But for now, you got to have an idea, but it's got to be real too, right? That's how we handle it. So, on page 56, there's a summary of A through E scenarios. They notice the check marks at the top. First of all, they all address your functional class size goals. Your goals, not ours, not any suggestion you change it. What you believe should be the delivery of class sizes at your various grade levels. Second of all, they reflect what your enrollments look to be 3 years from now and 5 years from now, based on the enrollment goals. Okay? And they reflect the pupil capacities of your buildings as they are right now. No renovations, no nothing. All right? Because it's like a business, and we're not a business, but you got to be businesslike. Your clients, the clients of your staff, are not the parents. God love them, we love them. It's the kids. So how many clients can you expect to serve? Pretty simple business model, right? Given how many clients we have, how are we going to serve them, not only in or where, but with what resources? Pretty same, right? It's all that same basic good decision making that anyone who delivers a service has to contemplate. That's what we're doing here. Okay? Okay. So, if you look at page 57, what if you did nothing? On page 57, we benchmark your current facility assets, the current program configuration, that's how you deliver the program now, and reflect that in your estimated enrollments in 3 and 5 years. See what we did? So, in 3 years, first of all, your pupil capacity in K-5 right now, you have enough room to serve within the class size goals that you have set as a district. That's important. I know, I'm going to say that a million times, like, shut up, Paul. But that's important. It's within your values. 1,366 children. In 3 years, the estimates suggest you'll have between 866 and 878 children to serve in K-5. So if you did nothing, you will only be using about 64% of your pupil capacity of your elementary K through 5 buildings. In essence, you'll have about 36% unused. Now, please understand, in this study, we also, all of your principals, and it's in there, documented on purpose. In the first day of, I think I mentioned this at a workshop, but in the first day of principal school, not to be facetious, you learn the following. 1, never turn the lights off to a room. 2, never turn into storage. 3, if you got the room, figure out some way to use it for kids. We can honestly substantiate that your administrative team is doing that. All right? Like, it could be, I don't know, just one period a day where there's a little seminar of 5 kids. They're doing that. They're doing good principalship, in our opinion. However, if you had the kids, you would use it right for a class. That's important for you to know. We don't always find that, but we found that here. Doing a good job with that. Take a look at 5 years from now. The estimates suggest, and if you remember, you can only go out 5 years for elementary. You can't go beyond 5 years in estimating. Remember, you can't, because you're not born yet. Oh, we're good, but hey, we're not going to measure twinkles in someone's eyes. We're not doing it. Anyway, so in 5 years, you'll only be using about 60% of your capacity in pre-K, or in K through 5. Take a look at your middle school. In 3 years and 5 years, you're only going to be using 60% of your capacity, and your high school about 63%, and it goes down to about 59% in 5 years.
And this is if we do nothing.
Do nothing.
Right.
Okay, which you can, but you're going to have that resource unused. You might say, well, so what? So it's unused. Well,
Costs money.
It's like, I will not sell my 3-bedroom home even though the kids aren't there anymore, because when they come, I don't want to stay in a motel. I want them upstairs in their old bedrooms. But I can't lie to you, not that I'm cheap, but I'll close the doors in the winter. And it's warm, but I close the doors. You hear what I mean?
And turn the lights out.
Well, yeah, I turn the lights out too. But it's common sense. All right? So there's a cost for that. That's not going for direct service for children. It all comes back to kids. You spend it here and it's not direct service to kids, then you're having, in essence, less resource to spend on kids. I don't care if it's utilities or staff. It's all like home. It really is. Bigger money, but it's just like home. All right. So that's if you did nothing. See how we call it a benchmark? All right. What you can do. Scenario A. This suggests, in this scenario, that you would serve K-5 at Ontario Primary and at Free Will Elementary. You would continue 6-8 at the middle school and 9 through 12 at the high school. You would not use Ontario Elementary for pupils. Here's the rationale. You see what the rationale is. Enrollments are down. You want to reduce without hurting kids. Fixed budget expenditures. You may even want to add program, but you're going to have to do it within the money you already have, not asking for more. That's what number 3 is all about, right? Everybody wants to do more for kids, but if you can do it within your means, that you already are asking, so much the better. Now, why Ontario Elementary to not use? One, it's a 3-story building. Does that make it bad? Of course not. I got to tell you, we're impressed with the buildings you have. It really are. However, the building condition survey, real data, which you've got to report on, not that it's bad, but it's all relative. The building condition survey from 2015 suggests over the next 5 years you'll likely have to do about $2 million worth of work at Ontario Elementary, which is more. Is it out of whack? We're not suggesting that. But it's more than any other of your elementary buildings. See? Right? Let common sense prevail. Also, in a chart that we show you in the body, in fact, you can see where it is, we do an inventory of the sizes of your classrooms. That building has the smallest classrooms out of all your buildings. So if you're looking, right, you're doing short term, but you're looking at long range, and you know what's happening with instruction. Remember when we went to school, we all sat in a row. They probably could have taught us in a closet. We just, as long as you stayed in that row and we did what we were told. Now you got computers, you got technology, you got small groups of kids working, you have speech teachers coming in, working with 4 kids, you have a reading specialist come in, you have a classroom teacher, you have a one-on-one aide, you may have 6 adults in a classroom. That takes space. And probably that trend of pedagogy is not going to change. It's called teaming. It's called go to the kids as the client with the resources in their classroom to help them. No pull out anymore. Oh, you're a bluebird, you can't be here. We've grown beyond that, right? Well, guess what? That takes space. So that's a building with your smallest classrooms. Does that make it a bad building? No. But if you're weighing what resource to use, we would suggest that's germane. Now you can say, nah, we don't think it is. Okay, you're the board. It's all right. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question.
Absolutely.
So what I'm seeing here is if you did close like Ontario Elementary,
Yep.
for the 18-19 year, we'd actually be running a little bit bigger class size.
No, not bigger class size. You'd be a little bit over capacity, a little bit. And you might say, well, gee, Paul, that's like being a little bit.
Pregnant.
Thank you. I knew somebody would say that, but I wasn't going to say it. But you see, in the study, we actually go through all of the spaces. If you looked at the pupil capacity, we went through, remember all these nice spaces that your principals are using? That if you had the kids, they would not use for support space, they would use for classrooms. When we went through that, we calculated that, but we were very, remember the C word? Conservative. There are other spaces.
We would not use a full classroom for reading recovery.
Ron, thank you. Here, Ron helped write this down. But no, really, remember? That's common sense. Your principals, along with Mathis, would know what to do. So that's we're comfortable that it's that close. You're absolutely right. But when we held up the mirror, we did it with a very conservative set of eyeglasses for this very reason. However, that may not be. That's where you have to. Remember, that's where you analyze and you discuss together with your team and Mathis and your whole team, including teachers. So your middle school though, and nothing changed, so that stays the same. All right. So that's scenario A. You see the model, how we do the math? We do all the layman work for you, or all the yeoman work. You don't have to go hunt and peck like, what was the capacity? It's all right there for you. We want you doing the important work with your community and your staff. It's the discussing with the real data. All right? You don't have to go research anything. It's all right there. All right? Any other questions?
I was just going to say, Dennis's question is really important because throughout all the scenarios, the constant is the class size guideline, so that part doesn't change.
Always.
And,
No, I just wanted
and
to-
you are correct in that, at that point, based upon the information that we have and the numbers that we're using, that it is over the capacity, which is something we'll address in scenario B, actually, as we look at a minor variation of scenario A.
So
But
if you.
what
go ahead.
it doesn't mean is having a second grade classroom in the cafeteria.
Oh, absolutely
It
not.
means
No.
utilizing
Right.
every bit of space
Right, classrooms.
and moving maybe your itinerant people.
Yes and no, not even, I mean, you've got, that's why, in fact, let's take a minute. We're gonna model what Ron started us to do. Take it just a second. If you turn to, if you turn to page 3 first, that's a handy little chart. Look at page 3.
I'm impressed that you know this.
Roman numeral 3 or number 3?
No, number
Number
3, thank you. Yeah, numeral 3, not Roman numeral. Okay?
Uh-huh.
You see where it says that shaded middle column, potential pupil capacity with reassignment?
Okay,
For example, at Ontario Elementary, we're suggesting conservatively, you have room for 25 more children by using some of that space that is now not used for classroom. However, keep that in mind, if you would turn to page 5, Ontario Elementary is the middle column. You see all those shaded areas? See the shaded? All of those spaces can be used differently without, in our opinion, hindering your program. Even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces there, we conservatively are suggesting that it would only add 25. However, in all likelihood, for example, you've got 814 square feet for reading AIS. And Ron kind of hit it on the head with a different example of reading recovery. Because as you know, you're working with one-on-one, right? Not that you're going to put anybody in a closet. No one's putting anybody in a closet. But you really don't need 770 square feet for one teacher and one kid. And that's the way reading recovery works. It's an outstanding program. That's one of the reasons it's so successful. It's one-on-one. But you really don't need 770 square feet to do that. Same thing with reading AIS, because we noticed that in reading AIS, you're in small groups of 3 or 4 or 5 kids with one teacher. You typically, when that's the model, you really don't need more than 450 or 500. Or if you do have 800 square feet or 770, you put 2 reading AIS teachers in who are working with 4 or 5 kids at the same time. And you might say, well, isn't that distracting? One could say that, but most often we hear teachers say, no, I like this because I got a colleague I can say, can you help me with Johnny here? It just seems he needs a different perspective, how I can help him better. Frankly, many educators think that's better because they're teaming with somebody. But that's your business, and I'm going to push that. That's up to your district. So we're only, out of all those spaces, we're only suggesting you would glean an extra 25. But do you see why we're comfortable in suggesting that 102% is really doable? Because I think, and we've met all your principals, and we're not just saying this falsely, we met some creative people. That if that was the mission, and that's how many kids we have, no one would be in a closet. You hear what I'm telling you? Okay? Yes, Tim?
So another way, the constructive way that they could come up with is if the class size was used 19, if they said, okay, 20, and now it's going to be at 98%, is that possible?
Well, yeah, but you
Is that
see,
possible?
only you have the right to do that.
Right, I'm just
We
saying
don't.
that that's what they could do
They could,
to make sure it worked.
but
Okay,
that's not our,
right.
Oh, we got-
that was,
I understand
that
that,
was the
just-
I follow
parameter we set
exactly
for
what
them,
you're
saying.
though, right?
You stayed within our parameters.
well, you have to, because you're the board, and it's your values. Our values mean nothing.
Well, we can
except-
change that a little bit. to
Well,
for a
but
couple
you
of years.
may, let's look at the data.
Yeah, let's
Fair
just
enough?
keep looking. I'm
But that's
with you.
something they could do in their realm of responsibility.
Well,
They could
along with
make
you, the
things
board,
fit.
don't forget,
Right.
the board's
Right.
the one that determines the program, with the recommendation of the superintendent. Okay. Anyway, so, in fact, you look at bottom of page 6, you see those spaces? We actually take what's in chart 5, and we actually give you a list of the spaces that, you see why? 800 square feet. Look at all the 800s at Ontario Primary. All right? Now, even though Ontario Elementary is a little smaller, but those spaces, you could free up the spaces that are in bigger classrooms that may only need less square footage because of the nature of its support. See how we, okay? And look at Free Will. You've got, oh my, what a lovely, large classroom building. Just lovely.
Great size.
Oh, for the future. Think of that. I mean, you could have 8 adults in there with a classroom of kids, because that's what's done now. You push in services. You don't pull out kids like when we went to school. Oh, the Bluebirds have to go to room 22. You don't do that anymore. Okay?
Buzzards go to 15.
That's your group.
It was the blackbirds.
Yes. All right. Okay, so thank you for that. Do you see how what we're doing? We're very conservative. All right, let's take a look at scenario B. Serve K-5 at Ontario Elementary. This is just like A. But Dennis, this helps. We felt it obligated to address what you questioned. We thought of that same thing. So in scenario B, yes sir?
Before we get to B, can you talk a little bit about
I'm
15?
gonna
about
challenge-
the findings.
Oh, Phil, thank you. What we do with each scenario, from our point of view as educators, guest outsiders, we identify what we suggest are major opportunities and challenges for that scenario.
Okay, makes
All right.
sense. It's pretty
Now-
well labeled, probably could have figured that out. But
Well, that's okay, but no, but why, I'm glad you brought it up, because you notice in the study that we print, you see all those empty spaces?
for us to put our.
That
own in
is a symbol to you and your community that, yeah, these guys know what they're doing, but guess what? They don't live here. They don't work here full-time. There very well could be other opportunities and challenges, and that's one of the things we asked your staff today. If there's anything we missed, tell us so we can put it in the study,
Okay,
all right?
okay.
That local perspective is terribly, terribly important, all right? So you can see what some of the opportunities are. Look under opportunities. Continue the value of 2 quote-unquote neighborhood schools, geographic sections. That's the best way I could describe it. It's really our geographic sections of your community. On the other hand, look at challenge. The closing of 1 school building for use by students. That's a challenge. We don't do negative positive because it's in life. There are only 2 cut and dry things we believe in the school business, really, that are black and white, positive, negative. 1, safety of staff and kids, or kids and staff. If this roof is falling in, that nice man there is not going to have a committee. He's going to tell us what the hell to do. Excuse the directive. We're going to get the heck out of here. And the second one have anything to do with moral issues with children. DA comes in with the police, person goes home, we'll work out the legal stuff later, we're going to protect our children with anything to do with moral. But if you think about it, there really isn't much else in our business is that black and white. It really isn't. Okay? That's why we look at it as opportunities and challenge. And you're going to see, you ready for this? This will confuse you. Not meant to. You're going to see some things in some of the scenarios that it's listed in both columns.
Well, I was just saying, I
I
mean.
can see that.
Because you know what? It's just like home.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so you notice what we've done. And then there could be more.
Okay.
This helps your analysis and discussion along with other things you're going to come up with along with your community and staff.
I like the very diplomatic way you put redraw instead of redistrict.
Well, it is redrawn.
That's yeah.
It really is. I mean, you certainly, in fact, we're not going to do that. But if you go back to the section that talks about your capacity for transportation, you have 66 single runs, 33 in the morning, 33 at night. You have a double tier run. Your transportation resource is like, wow, you might want to contract out with the municipality to do municipality transportation. You have great resource. So you're not at a loss for flexibility and creativity to do something different. Maybe at less cost, probably so. But you have enough capacity to do kind of almost what you want to do without buying more buses or anything. All right, from our point of view, but only you can decide that. Does that help? Okay. Oh, we're going to do B. We were starting B.
Yep.
Okay. Here,
Yeah.
because actually, Dennis, we thought of what you did, what you said earlier. What we did, all we did was take Ontario primary, substitute Ontario elementary. You might say, well, gee, Paul, you just said it was a 3-story building. You just said it was smaller. On the other hand, there's that other variable that it would, if you use the primary, at least initially on paper, you might be over capacity. That's compelling enough to show this scenario, this as a scenario. You see what happens? Now you're looking at between 91 and 92. But you have to weigh that. Gee, short-term, gee, let's model it. You probably would sit down with the principal and say, gee, Stella, that's not her name, but do you think if we did this, what could you do so we're not at 102%? Knowing that we met with her, I think she'd have a clear answer for you. But you may not want to do that, you could do this.
It's
All right.
greater. I think it's greater. OP.
Okay? Did I screw up?
No, we're going fine.
Okay.
Following.
Opportunities and challenges. Doug's gonna do C.
Okay, on C scenarios where we look at a campus type effect for the district. So if you look at the top under the scenario, we're looking at K2 at OP, and then 3-5 at Ontario Elementary. We would continue with 6-8 at the middle school, 9-12 at the high school, and so therefore you're not using Freewell Elementary. So under this one, again, the idea of estimating the future enrollments, to realize that we're going to need fewer than the 3 elementary schools. The idea of centralizing into the one campus, so to speak, could bring about some significant transportation savings as part of this scenario. You probably would be able to reduce some of your fixed expenditures because of the centralization, which would help to keep the tax levy down. And then at the same time, you may be able to add programs, because sometimes when you have this type of centralized campus, you have everything there, and you might be able to add different things that kids could access in between buildings that are right there. As an example, you might, with all the elementary being on the one campus, you might have some of your students in the high school that potentially could be serving as mentors and doing different things with middle and elementary. There's all kinds of things that might be program options that you'd be able to look at.
Let's use the data, why free will, excuse me. Again, from our point of view, because we're upstate superintendents, we heard it, oh, free will's out there and whatever, and we looked at it like, we kind of look at each other like, pretty close. Let's give you, forget that.
Right.
Let's look at the data, remember? Let's look at the data. Go to page 32 first.
Yeah.
Remember we said we're going to model how to use this? Go to 32.
Is that where you measure distances?
There's more. That's the basic of distances. See the chart?
Wait a minute.
Okay. Free will is 7.2 miles from Ontario Elementary and 7.4 miles from Ontario Primary. That's real data. Let's dig a little deeper, shall we? Somebody nod. Thanks, Brad.
Sure.
Okay.
Page 41.
Go to, if you would, let's go to 41.
You guys
Dig a
are
little
impressive.
deeper. Well, we love what we do, but it's all about serving kids.
I mean, just to be able to know in 68-page document where everything is.
Well, you live this stuff. Let's take, then we're gonna go to one more page. What we asked your transportation people to do is, like, you see the chart? Let's take a look at Ontario Elementary. The miles of this student from his or her home to Ontario Elementary, that's the student who lives the furthest away. Why we pick the furthest? Because everybody is closer.
Right.
Gives you a perspective. Otherwise, this could be 100 pages. You know?
Okay.
Who's the furthest away? Because then you know everyone else is closer. How's that?
And that's in the whole district, not just.
No, the kids who go to Ontario Elementary right now
Yeah, right.
is 7.051 miles away. They travel now, the furthest child from that school to that elementary school. If the elementary school listed to the left is closed, how many miles would the current student who lives the farthest from the Ontario Elementary have to travel to get to? Free Will Elementary is 10.54, but we have to dig deeper. That's from the child's home to Free Will. But what's the net difference that they'd have to go further than they are now? Following that? Common sense. Okay? So,
4 miles.
pardon?
About 4 miles.
Well, we're going to show you that. And it is on,
I used math.
well, that's it. You're doing the math. I want to show the chart, page 52.
52?
52. So if Ontario Elementary is no longer used, the child, in this school year now, the child who's the furthest away from Ontario Elementary lives 7.05 miles away. If that school no longer was used, all right, and they went to Free Will Elementary, their time, or their miles, they'd have to go 3.5 miles more to that school than what they were doing now. Now, we're not going to make a value judgment if that's a lot or not. It's your judgment, not ours. But you can see that we do that for all the schools. See how we did that?
Mm-hmm.
We had this once before, back when they did wanted to do a capital improvement project. They put a pin in the middle, circled around, and the furthest point in Ontario was still the same, about the same for the furthest point.
Well, we do this with real kids.
Right.
Now, don't misunderstand. Could you have a house where there's no kid now that next year could be a kid and that kid is further? Yes, but you can't deal with that. It's America. People move where they want to live. And if you went to a different model, people would know that when they bought the house. So we're dealing with reality here, like who lives the furthest now. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
See why?
Yeah.
I mean, you're good, but you can't. I mean, how many variables can you deal with at that time, right? So you see how you can use these charts? It gives a perspective. We make no value judgment if 3 miles or 3.5 is too far. That's your job. But now you know everybody has the same data. Everybody has, no one's shooting from the hip, right? Okay. Thank you. You want to finish that?
Sure. So back to 62, where we were looking at this scenario C, why free will, and then again the reasoning, looking at C as a campus school, and free will's not located with those buildings. So now if you take a look at the enrollment, and if you look at the operating capacity, and you see that what we're looking at here for 18-19, and then looking at the use in 18-19, you can see that we're at 95, 98, 89%. And as you figure it out to 2021, we're still looking at good capacity use of the buildings there. There's still room, even though you've got everything centralized in this one location. If you skip down to the middle school, you can see there, we're still looking at middle and high school where there's still some pretty significant capacity, but again, this is where you have to weigh. What are the pluses of a campus setting? How does that work out with some financial savings? What does that mean for capacity in elementary, and what you would have to deal with in the secondary? So those are issues that you'd have to look at and examine. But in this particular scenario, it does put them all under the quote unquote one roof type of setting.
Typically upstate, it's prudent, good administration of program to be only, I shouldn't say only, to be about 8% or 10% of unused pupil capacity. About 92%, 90%. Here's why, and you've been there. There's seasoned board members here. Not everything Mathis or Mike Havens came to you with cost money. But you know what it all? I'll bet you a bagel or another piece of that good cake I just had down the road. Team of teachers want to do something for kids. They need some kind of space, something. I don't care if it's a 4th grade Christmas play or something. They need space. So that's why it kind of try to keep 8 to 10% of unused pupil capacity. Not that it's luxurious, kind of flexibility for either programming or, who knows, all of a sudden, I don't know, suddenly New York City and Buffalo find that living around here, God forbid, that's what happened after 9/11. Schools in Binghamton, the Triple Cities, etc., suddenly had this influx of kids. And frankly, they were parents who lived in the metro area, and they commuted. They were 4-day-a-week people. In the capital district, they were called 3-day-a-week people. Having the same thing in the capital district. There was an outside variable that caused people to say, that's it, we're out of here. They still work there. No, real story. 3-day people, I always found that interesting. One part of the state called them something different. Who knows? Flexibility. Okay.
Just as I was looking at the next page on 63 with opportunities and challenges, you can see what we've done is listed the opportunities of this scenario with the campus idea and some of the potential things that you could do regarding addressing the building conditions survey, streamlining transportation that we talked about. Perhaps in the middle high school, the option of some BOCES type involvement with renting
Rent
space.
You got space to rent.
You know, it's there, it's a possibility, you know, something that you could look at. The curriculum development, in-service, all those types of program enhancements that could be available. You know, I just was thinking, when I looked at the challenges, one of the things we didn't have here, and we've talked about it, one of the challenges potentially of this scenario could be the loss of free will as far as the advantageous class size of that elementary school.
That's a real loss.
Looking down the future, where we said that those large classrooms really could give you some flexibility in dealing with future enrollments and dealing with future programs. We didn't list that as a challenge, but I would suggest that might be something for you as a potential.
It's being taped.
recorded.
It's being taped.
As a potential
That's why,
challenge.
and that's not the only reason, but it's like realtors, location, location, location. Exactly what Doug, and you can walk through the video, you see what we saw, like, wow, all right? That's probably not the only asset, but it could be a primary asset if you had these cup of coffee, what-if meetings with neighboring schools about long-term future, about reorganization. That probably could be a tremendous asset in such a scenario, if you chose
It's location, you're saying.
yeah, and the size of the building, and because you've got some neighboring schools that way.
It becomes a very
Again,
advantageous piece of real estate.
very advantageous. However, you know, chicken or egg kind of thing. We wait 20 years with it, but in the meantime, we still have to deal with the current.
Right.
No one said this was easy for your part, all right?
Yeah,
Don't
just,
know.
I thought that was worth noting,
Right.
because that's a key,
Just something
that's
else.
a key part.
Yeah,
of it.
Dennis.
I see we got the numbers and the
Yeah.
percentages and everything else, but I really don't see here, and I'm sure this is probably not your business, but the cost involved.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna get there.
Okay, we're getting there.
When I had the chocolate mousse cake, I also, my wife should see this. I also had a dish of vanilla ice cream.
Okay.
So the vanilla ice cream's coming,
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
all right.
Yeah, we wouldn't leave.
Oh, no, no,
Okay, I wanna-
no.
we would
Oh, never leave you like
Board members
that.
without-
Never hang without some vanilla ice cream. All right?
Okay,
Okay.
now I'm looking for numbers.
All right, no, wait.
I'm looking for vanilla ice cream.
Okay.
You already told us the page, it was.
Yeah.
Well, let's hold on.
All right.
No, we
Let's
gotta
go.
post
Listening.
all.
We are going now to D. You want to do D and I'll do E?
Sure. Okay, so if we look at D then, this one has a little different setup. So on D, we're looking at K4 at OP and at Freewell Elementary. All right, so they each have a K4 program. Then we have 5-8 at the middle school building, so a little different setup with the way the middle school takes place. You're still having a 9-12 high school, so you're not using OE at all for pupils. So now you're away from this concept we just talked about of the one school area. All right, so our rationale, again, you know, that first one that we've talked about, looking at how the middle school has significant unused pupil capacity and trying to address the unused capacity of the middle program. You probably could reduce some expenditure costs and keep the tax rate down and looking at it in this way. And then again, you've got an opportunity to add programs and looking at, particularly at K4 and K4, and there are some advantages to a 5-8 type of program for consistency in that middle level program. YOE, we've talked about it before, the three building, the cost, potential cost, and then the smaller classroom sizes. So now if you take a look down below, I mean, you've seen, you know, these numbers and what they're leading to. You see the capacity based on our class size goals of the district, and you can see the enrollment that's coming up in 18, 19, and 20, and 21. So here you can see we're pretty close in the 84, 85, 81 to 84. So there's better usage there, looking at pupil capacity. Looking at the middle school and the high school, because we've gone to a 5-8, you can see now if you go over to 2018-19 pupil capacity in the middle school, and then 2020-21, we're looking at a better number for the use of your pupil capacity in the middle level. So that's been addressed in this situation. High school, you know, we're still looking at that, you know, those figures 63, 59, they're still remaining fairly constant in that range. So Another way to look at how you might organize here, and again, our opportunities and challenges on this one, you see we've got quite a few here,
Wow.
but you can, as we talked about these, you can go through, again, you know, the key, obviously, if you go to the previous scenario where you're all on one campus, you could, well, you do in effect lose that neighborhood school concept, so this retains the neighborhood school concept with the K4, K4. Again, you lower the building condition surveys. Pupil capacity is a little bit more in line than what we've talked about that Paul just mentioned, and as you go down through it, you can see there's quite a few options that we would see, particularly as you get into the middle school, where you potentially could do more things for the 5th and 6th graders and how you set up teaming with 7th and 8th. It could provide you with some good flexibility in that middle level program, and it's not unheard of at all to have 5-8 middle schools. I mean, they're
That's where
out
you
there.
can start your languages and everything anyway.
There's a lot of things programmatically you could do. What it also does that's very helpful as far as your certification, you know, you've got your certification issue dealing with 5 and 6 that are the same, and now certification 7, 8, with now you're into the middle of the high school certification. So it potentially can make it easier regarding the staffing as you look at what you're going to do with that 5, 6, and 7, 8. So that there's some options there that are potentially pretty good opportunities as you look at that.
Now, one of the things you're gonna hear from folks as they look at this, Steve, what if we suddenly have lots of people moving in?
Well, I was thinking the same
Now,
thing.
That's
leaving.
that's why they're standalone studies, because they're extensive. That's where the enrollment projection study can help answer that. You notice I interviewed 2 of your realtors. There's the answer there. That one thing that hinders, we're talking major development, because we also show with the demographics, how many kids really are in per household in Wayne.
Right.
You're not talking 8 kids per household, you're talking 0.6, 0.7. I mean, that's what it is today. Not just here, but across, okay? Where I'm going in this, it takes not the usual 10, 20 permits, if that. In fact, that's not all your towns, a year to make a dent at all. In fact, it doesn't make a dent.
Right, we talked
It's-
about 200 or 300. It would take.
At least 200 or 300. So, read what I interviewed. That's why I asked from you, who do you people, your community, believe and have credibility as realtors? That's why I interviewed. And there's the data. The other piece is, I won't into detail, but I did interview some folks who are doing some major 250, 300 home developments near here. Okay? I interviewed that person because I have to be on the phone with him on a different reason. I said, help me understand this. Here's this, and I'm just being nice. If I didn't believe this, I wouldn't say it. Here's this neat community where you can have a nice piece of land, be within quick, not even fast speed to one of the best hospitals on the eastern seaboard, and shopping and restaurants, and still have the pitter patter of deer through your land. No, I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious, all right? And great roads, okay? I mean, you got your choice. Bad weather, you take the 2-lane like we did to the restaurant, you take the 4-lane. I mean, we try to look at this objectively, but there isn't any major development going on. And the answer I got was, Paul, this corporation could buy cheaper land. But one of the hindrances, of course, is sewers and water. It's not extensive. And at this point in time, and probably for the foreseeable future, it's the perception of where people want their kids to go to school. And that's not anti-Wayne. Don't misunderstand. I found that, I can say this on tape, it's the same thing in the Capital District. In Albany, there's the river, and you cross all those bridges. The districts on the other side of the river aren't growing as fast as those on this side. And I was flat, like, why? Because I'm upstate, you use you travel, right? There's this mental barrier about crossing that bridge, either to go home or go to work. This unit, with all that traffic, is booming. Where if you just took, actually shorter, you you know what I mean, you've been there, you cross the river, there's beautiful, really top quality schools, houses. There's this mental mindset about not crossing the river. That's similar to what frankly,
Crossing
Wayne.
that county line.
Well, thank you. You said it, Dennis, just like you said the other thing. I'm not going there, but you're absolutely right. Is there an answer to it? Your realtors had no answer to it, neither did I. Or neither does this major developer who's developing 250 homes within 6 minutes of here. 6 minutes. So,
Why
is that
not us?
definitive? Could it happen, Phil? The likelihood, though, from the best information we've held up, Amir,
Not in 5
probably
years.
not.
Right, not in 5 years.
Probably not.
Yeah.
In fact, it was interesting, one of your realtors said, they talked about Webster, remember he said Wayne is like Webster was 20 years ago?
Right.
That's 2 generations.
Yeah.
But that was important how he said that. So you see what I mean? He's positive that, not now, but it's like Webster 20, in his opinion, 20 years ago. Well, you could wait 20 years, but it looks like you're facing some issues. He's just not gonna wait 20 years. Enough said. I'm not saying, does that help you? It's not.
Well, growing up in Webster, you know, all my friends, many of my friends, we've all moved to Wayne now. And, you know, I've just seeing that kind of trend happen, especially with the building being maximized in them areas now. But there's still areas to go.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because I talked to your realtors about what's happening right now in the Rochester market for all kinds of houses. We're not talking high-end, we're talking like houses at $100,000 or $90,000, like in the city of Rochester yet. They're very, very high. You can't, they go on the market, the next day they're sold. And we say, why? Well, especially with all the tech jobs coming in, it's people want to live closer to the metro area. Don't ask me why. It's not far. It's like neat. You get a cup of coffee, you drink it, you're home, and you get that out of your system before you see your family. I mean, we all know the reasons, but that's not what folks where their heads are at. Best I could help with. But your realtors they're really neat people. I hope you run into them and thank them for their time. I spent a lot of time on the phone with you.
You're welcome.
Well, yes, sir.
They're not all.
Is it because they still refer to us as 315, or is
No,
that right?
some of the things are, there's not as many houses right now. So things out here are going quick too.
Yeah.
But that's why people are getting lots now and starting to
And
grow a
I-
little bit. There's an upswing,
Well,
but
that's-
not a big upswing that we're gonna see.
Even
I don't
gas.
think.
Yeah, that's major. Not for folks like me. I've always lived in rural America, so I have, well, so what? But people.
But I mean, even gas.
I know, I drive 14 miles and people look at me like I got 2 heads.
Yeah.
Right. Just real quickly, before we flip off the challenges, I would have you note the second check mark under D. The other ones are fairly consistent, but notice under D, challenge for this scenario is you'd have to redraw attendance areas to be served by 2 K-4 elementary schools, such that the K-4 population is assigned to about 50% to each K-4 school. That means that kids who now go to OP or OE are going to have to attend free will. Now, you know what that might involve and some of the challenges with that,
Well-
I know. But that's worth noting there.
You see what? There's
Similar
gotta be an
challenges,
equity
but-
of, you need volume of kids for equity of class size, so you just can't, well, they traditionally have gone there to let them come here. What'll happen, you'll have this equity gap, you'll have such high, well above your class size, really, that's the math of it, high class size here versus there, and that's not equitable. So you really gotta, right? I mean, for the sake of kids, to be
That's common
equitable.
sense.
You'd have to do it.
Thank you. Remember I said that, it's really hard.
It's best for the kids.
Doug,
Absolutely.
I just want to ask you, in all of these, it says there's instructional space for the district to provide universal pre-K directly.
Yes,
In the buildings that remain open,
yeah,
Yep.
yep.
okay.
You wanna do that one? Should we go back? You wanna do a, I'm calling it the
No,
Ron
because
model? Should we go
I
back to
see
the
that
data?
mentioned all the
Well,
time.
let's do this. Take a look at page 35. I referred to this earlier in our presentation. Take a look at page 35. One of the things we look at as researchers, is there something you're not doing now that could help legitimately use quality instructional space for? And one of those things is universal pre-K. So if you look at page 35, right now, those are the providers for universal pre-K, on top of page 35. Okay? So, there's the picture of the data. Now let's go to so we don't like to mix analysis with the data. We want you to have the data, and then where we have inferences, we want you to know that it's an observation. See what I mean? We don't want to mix the two, all right? So if you look at page 48, middle of the page. You now receive $142,596 from University of Pre-Grade Band. At your option, and that's important, you now contract with 5 community providers to provide 2.5 hours of pre-K education to 81 4-year-old residents of the district. The curriculum articulation between the pre-K program and the kindergarten program is minimal.
We would suggest you underline that.
Yeah, minimal, really underline that.
That's an important point.
Because pre-K, right? Pre-K in development for, right? K and beyond, that articulation, now what I mean by articulation, curriculum is complementary, values of how to present the curriculum,
Goals for the kids moving
okay?
into kindergarten.
You've all heard this as parents, there's the basal series, there's the phonics series, all that stuff. There's got to be articulated, or kids are going to get confused. See what I mean? That's minimal right now. Something to think about. Even if you don't do anything with, you may want to work with Mathis and the team to talk about that. But anyway.
Basically, we're talking about but even looking within the providers, as you examine the providers, are they mostly involved with socialization of the students? What are the academic skills that they're teaching? How far do they want the kids to go? What's the difference between head to rhyme to we people to hop to tot spot? Try and understand what they're doing, because ultimately what you have, kids going from those pre-Ks into your program, and they could have 5 different sets of skills that they're coming in with, so they come into the kindergarten and you don't have any coordination of it. So that the concept, what a lot of people are doing is looking at how do we get pre-K into our building so that they can coordinate with our staff and get them jump-started and moved into the program that much faster. And if you think about the benefits of the elementary principal, the reading support, special ed, all those people that assist the kids, if they know the kids that are right there on campus and what they're like now and what they're going to be into the kindergarten, it really moves those kids
And support personnel, certified PE people who understand, right, ambulatory and all the motor skills of kids. I mean, all that value added that they're not getting now.
Are you saying, in that sentence, where you said we should underline minimal, are you saying that the curriculum coordination between the pre-K programs and the kindergarten program is minimal? Is that also what you're saying?
They're not all on the same
Well, hang on, I'm
page.
asking them. Are you saying that
Yeah.
the coordination isn't
They're
there?
not coordinating, it's just articulation, like, are we all on the same page of?
Well, articulation to me is how you articulate and say something. That's
Well,
clearly not how you're
in the
using the
public school
word.
business, that's what it means.
I'm not in the public school. Well,
Well, yeah,
I am on the
you're
board, but I'm not. So I want you to clarify it.
Yeah, that's-
Everybody's on the
I'm
same
asking for you to
page.
clarify it. So are you saying
Everybody's on the
that?
same page.
Okay.
But they're not.
So it's minimal. That's the minimal part.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're suggesting, go ahead.
If I may respond.
Absolutely.
So what we have currently, as you go through the study, you'll read it. So there's a teacher who meets with the folks once a month, and that's really minimal. So what they're sharing, and I've kind of just read through this, and we had conversations actually today, and this is actually one of the things identified on our strategic plan, that whole piece around.
I thought we just talked about this.
Yes, we just had that conversation. So,
Which we didn't know.
the thought
That's
is, can we do more for our early childhood programs? It may cost us a little bit more, but in terms of the outcomes for kids, will they be better served if they're in-house with a teacher or 2 teachers internally? And so they're here, the teachers are working with the staff, or working with the students, they see they get our culture.
Yeah, we just
Now
had
there's
this.
there's all these different thoughts.
Okay.
So this is something that we're working on, we'll come back and talk.
I just didn't understand it. It was clear as mud
So if
to
you
me,
look
so I
at
wanted to
48,
clarify that.
Wait, if
Go
I
ahead,
could
please.
just real quickly, that's a great point, and if I could draw it with the question Dennis had about getting to the dollars. When we get, and then to draw your question together, so all 3 together, your point that you just made. When we get to the dollars, and when we look at what the financial impact of these is, and some of the reductions of staffing, you're gonna see a dollar amount. So in effect, you might find that there's a savings of $400,000. So you look at that savings and you say, wait a minute, it's important for us to bring the pre-K into the school. That costs $70,000. Right? So rather than a savings of 400, we're going to save 330. We're going to take the 70, use it with our UPK grant, and now we're going to move the kids into the school
And give them more.
Okay.
because we see that as a
So,
huge benefit.
but what we do
That's
this,
a great way.
like right now, your kids only get pre-K 2.5 hours a day. If you brought in to school, in all likelihood, it'd be at least 3 hours a day. So right up front, you get 30 more hours of contact time. The other value added is that, let's go back to your great transportation system. Don't get me wrong, it's efficiently run and all of that, but you do, I talked to your transportation guy, you do have seats on your elementary buses, okay? And it's very clear, this is years ago, Jim Davis, doesn't matter who he was, but he fought for this, not fought, but he got this for the legislature, passed this years now, that if you have room on your bus, you can transport pre-K children without an aid deduct, because by law, it's only meant for K through 12 children. But if you have a pre-K program and you have room on your bus, you may transport pre-K kids without an aid deduct, that's how aid runs. That's a big plus. Now, we're not suggesting, you may want to do this, we're not suggesting you necessarily do that, we're not suggesting a midday run, we're still talking about half day. But in essence, you have the problem for your parents. Right now, they gotta take them there and pick them up, and take them there and then pick them up at the AM, PM. Well, in this way, it's not the full plate, but you can get them there and they'd have to pick them up, that's half the problem. And for the other afternoon kids, they gotta take them there, but they're gonna get home. So a little value added for your community. The next thing, and what's it cost? Well, we are estimating it would take 2 certified teachers and 2 teacher aides. Okay, right now you get $142,000. It would cost approximately $88,000 more if we did it in-house.
Where are you
On
reading?
top of
Page 49.
49.
Page 49.
Page 49.
Going back to what Mathis has told us at the beginning, he wants to see our curriculum line up horizontal and vertically.
Right.
This would help
Would help.
the alignment.
Now, we have to be up, you gotta be, notice what we've
This
done
is the
here.
grant.
Difference.
What else could, for example, what might be value-added services opportunities and curriculum consisting for children if universal pre-K was delivered by school district personnel? We've given you some ideas. For example, their PE would not be just recess. They'd have an actual certified PE teacher who understands child development, fine motor skills, working with those teachers. That's pretty high end. That's good stuff for kids at that age, right? The reality is you're experiencing falling enrollment. You have the space and
We have the
you're
staff.
gonna have staff. Either, this won't use all of them, only 2. Okay? And then finally, there's this last bullet, out of respect for your providers. If the community providers did not deliver universal pre-K for the school community, do they have other lines of business that they could increase or explore to make up the difference in their for-profit businesses? So that respectfully, first of all, makes it very clear to the public, these are for-profit businesses. Nothing wrong with that, it's America. However, they're for-profit businesses. But that's an honest thing, these are your community people too. So, might there be other lines of business that could mitigate any financial loss that they might have because you did pre-K? Gotta talk about it, it's respectful. It's there, it's in writing, at least. Still, some may not like it, but it's there, it's respectful. Okay? But that's a real example, looking at holistically, save, but you know what? Spend just a little bit more, and look how, you have to decide, it's not us, look how much more our children could get at that age level. But that would be your judgment, not ours, okay?
I have a
Yeah.
question. Back on page 35,
Yes.
looking at school buildings, is the year for the middle school correct? And I only asked that because I was the first class in there, and I believe it was 68.
Which page are you on,
Page
Pam?
35,
The year that the
middle school
was
built in
built.
66.
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
Your business official's gonna look at that, would you circle that and ask them, because I got this from them.
Yeah, that's
I got,
'cause I graduated
Where was it?
in 74, and I was the first class in.
You're built 66. Maybe
Oh,
that's when they
really?
broke ground. Maybe that's when they broke
Broke
ground. Could be. Usually that's what you put on the flags, when you broke
Oh,
ground.
okay.
But,
Could be then.
No, no.
which
Yeah.
is-
Because
thanks,
we were-
Mathis.
That is accurate, I think, that's when they broke ground.
That's when the stone that you put in the corner,
Yeah.
usually it's when you break ground.
Yeah.
That's
Then-
probably
So
why.
the first class went in there in the fall of '68.
Okay, see,
Wow.
2 years.
Yeah, how about
That's
that?
about what it takes, okay?
But that puts
Good
2
point.
years of not
Thank you,
using
that's why
that
we're
element.
here. We wanna make sure it's
Yeah, that's
accurate.
interesting.
Interesting.
Where were we before?
Okay, so we are at the final one, E. Let me share this with you.
That's for when you may close.
Here, why don't you do it? E. I'm gonna run to the restaurant.
Okay, sure.
We will.
All right, under E, what we looked at here was, we've got K2 at OP. Then we were talking about doing grades 3, 6 in an intermediate elementary school at the middle school building. So this is a pretty different scenario. Serve all secondary grades 7, 12 at the high school building. A very different setup. And then in this case, use do not use OE or free will elementary for pupils. So in scenarios A through D, one of the buildings is being closed. In scenario E, you have the 2 being closed of OE and free will. So you can look at the rationales. Again, the issue about enrollment. Again, you know, this is attempting to answer the question about the middle school and the significant unused pupil capacity that's been there. With the high school, we've not addressed in the other scenarios the unused capacity in the high school, so we looked at this model to address the pupil capacity in the high school. Then looking at, again, you know, what this would mean for tax levy, using resources to add program elements, and you've seen why OE and you've seen why free will, so we've listed those before. So this is you know, obviously rather different than what the other ones. The other ones have variations on the theme, so to speak. This one's looking at a different setting of how you're going to use the K2, the 3, 6, and the 9, 12. Now, if you take a look at estimated pupil capacity use versus enrollment, and you look at 2018, 2019, now when you look at K2, you can see pupil capacities were pretty much right on the mark there. If you go to the middle school, you're bumping up pupil capacity in the middle school, and then clearly now when you look at the high school, you've not seen pupil capacity like this in any of the other scenarios, not even close. So now you're looking at 92. Interestingly enough, you know, regardless of what you might think of a 7-12 program, and there's, you know, obviously opportunities and challenges on both sides of that, but for this instance, as far as the capacity, this is the first one where you're really having a secondary building where the pupil capacity is in what would be expected guidelines. Now, I'm sure you have lots of thoughts, and a lot of people do, about 7th grade in it, 8th grade in it, you know, and what that means. But as far as the capacity, and as you look, even as you go out to 2020 and 2021, you can see what the capacities are there. As far as the operations of the district, in this one, you're much, much closer to those pupil capacities. And obviously, when we look at the financial savings in just a second, you know, you can imagine the savings are going to be commensurate based upon the building use and how you're using the capacity.
But this high school is, it's a quality building.
Oh,
There, we just said, I just said that as a high school principal and superintendent, you just said that as a middle school.
Well, no, it's a jewel.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a jewel.
It blew me away the first time I walked through it.
You have flexibility of where you would put certain programming for grade levels. It's, in our opinion, would not be a shoehorn to exercise. It's not at all.
No, and we cannot, and we're not just saying just because, you know, you're all here and we're working for you, but we've been in schools from the western part of the state to the Adirondacks to Central to Albany to Long Island, and your high school's as nice as any we've seen.
Okay.
It's a beautiful, beautiful setup.
Well, part of it is, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us on this board, plus Ron, who is here, who went to school here when we had enrollment that was way up in buildings that were 30% less, 40% less. I know
Yeah.
technology has changed and multimedia and all that stuff, so you have to take that into consideration. But, you know, for the potential to have more people in this building or in any building is very much
But
okay.
also, you're right, and I'm a lot older than you are, and I'll give you an example, not the age, but take a look at page 34. One of the major differences of when you went to school and when I went to school a lot more years than you ago is the focus on all children, especially special needs children.
Right.
Special needs. Look at this, here's your 3-year pattern. Out of all your children in 2015, you have 378 that qualify for special services under special ed. When I went to school, there was Mario Roma. He didn't make it. He did, nicest guy. It wasn't really a program for him, but he could go to work at GM without a high school diploma, and he was able to buy 2 cars, he was able to buy a house, and get his kids to go to college. Those jobs don't exist anymore. There are no throwaway kids. So our programming has changed.
Right.
Not only for special needs, but you offer the international baccalaureate. Holy cow. So there's that spectrum too. Okay? Those children aren't ignored anymore. Like they might have been way back in the 60s and 70s. Okay? So there's been some changes.
Right.
Because some people say, yeah, I went to school, we had twice as many kids. Well, but you probably had half as quality program as you have now. There I said.
Exactly.
But not you, but really, so we expect different things from our public education today. And not coddling, we're talking about programs, respect for individual kids to get them there. Because there are no throwaway kids anymore.
But you've included these children
Yeah, sure.
in all these scenarios as well.
And by the way, that's why on page 34 we do that. We always look, like we did for universal pre-K, we're looking for anything that could they add to their facilities and program. When we look at special ed, you know why. The good news is, over 95% of your children are already served here in the halls of Wayne. Very few children aren't served here, and those are your highly involved children.
Right.
Okay? So if this was out, say you only had 30% served here, well, it'd be just like we'd say, gee guys, you have the opportunity to add this in-house programming. Look at your numbers.
Right.
They are being served here. Good job.
It's always been a priority in this district
Sure.
in the last,
Sure.
I don't know how many years, to have our special ed
But
kids here.
here's an answer to folks on the street who might say, well, I went to school.
Numbers prove.
Well, they're right. Expectations for what public schools are supposed to do are different too. And sometimes it usually does take more space and more personnel. It does. We expect more from our public schools. Okay?
Let's get to the money for that.
All right, let's do this.
Mario,
Oh, wait a minute. Come on. All
I
right.
gotta read it.
You read the last page.
Okay, so they're preliminary financials. And why they're preliminary, because they're very conservative, and until you choose one or two where your team, Dr. Calvin and your team can really fine tune the estimates, that's the best you can do with it, because it's too much work for your staff to do all 5. So,
Can I point out just an obvious observation
Sure.
here? I know you said there was about 6 recommendations?
5 options, not recommendations.
Or options, that's right, you're not recommending anything.
No, not our job.
But I noticed that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out. They all include closing a building. There's nothing in here that says cut some buses, cut some positions.
Because that's cutting programs. No, that wasn't your mission.
No, but it's just noticeable that there are no options that don't include closing a
Right.
building.
Absolutely.
Just the option of doing nothing.
Right.
Well, that's always not there.
Well, yeah, I mean, because let's say, for example, we took away, I mean, you didn't need us. You could have hired a 7th grader, gave him a free pizza meal and ice cream down at the street to say, figure out a way that we can serve with less staff. And they would say, well, we'll just divide all the classes by 30. You didn't need us to do that. We started with what your values are. We have no right to change those. Number 2, back to where these costs come from, and this is a good segue to this section. All of the costs are based on the common sense. If you didn't use a building, what would not be there? We did not touch, remember we said earlier, any of your language teachers, speech teachers, PT teachers, any of that. Only staff that, in essence, are inherent because the building exists. See the difference? And honoring your class sizes. That's pretty common sense. If this is our class size goal, like right now, in the study, we won't go to that page, but it's in there. Right now, without changing your facilities, we do address it in the wage bill.
Okay.
Yeah, we should actually show you that. Right now, you have 6 more FTEs in K-5 than you need to. Right now. Without changing buildings, without changing configuration, you have 6 more FTEs, okay, that you have on staff, providing services, that to meet your class size goals, not over, meeting it, you don't need those 6 FTEs. That's That's $525,000 right there without changing buildings.
Is that true without redistricting?
Right, absolutely, yes, right now. And you, here, okay, we won't spend time on it, but I wanna show you the chart.
Yeah,
Let's show you the chart. Go to, I think it's 24, but I may be wrong, hold on. I wanna show you this, because it startled me. Not startled me, that's drastic.
Alarmed?
No, no,
it was interesting.
it's interesting, thank you. Let me get you this.
What did you say, page 24?
No,
No, it's not 24.
Oh.
No, hold on. Here, I'll get it. I'm just scrolling through on this one. It's here. It's coming.
38?
30?
Which chart are you looking for?
Hold on.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to find, that's the one I can.
It's with the, here, I got it. I'll get it. Give me just a second. A little slow on this one, not bad. Here we go. I found it. Page 17. There you are. The current configuration of buildings and grade level, top of page 17. The current configuration, just the way you have it, without change, could serve the enrollment with fewer grade level, full-time equivalent staff and meet the functional class size of the district. Right now, you could serve your children with 6 fewer full-time equivalent grade K through 5 teachers, right now.
So in effect, it's almost an option of what?
There's what you're saying.
What you're talking about, Phil.
Let's not do anything. Just on your class size goals, you got 525,000, I rounded down. It was 475,
Right,
but it's 525.
Okay.
There's a savings there without doing anything to the buildings.
It's funny, but, Ron,
Yeah, that's
the
good, that's a
numbers
good
that you
point.
sent out showed that they hired 10 on the lower levels.
So,
Yep.
so you see,
Yeah,
we show you the math. We don't want you to take our word for anything. We show you the math, of where it came from.
Yeah, yours is a good- that's a
Do you have the same at the other levels, or no? Are there, are?
Oh, we do something at the secondary too. For example, right now, you're delivering the 7-8 program. You're using 16 teachers, when really, you could deliver it with 12.8. Could. There's some pedagogical issues, but you have to weigh those, and it's listed there. That's described on, just give them the page. We won't spend time going through that unless you want to. But, because I want to get to the money, because Dennis says get to the money. No, I shouldn't say that. Everybody, we want to get all the data. That middle school thing. You might give a page.
I'm trying to find it.
I think that's on,
Trying to go back.
here we go. I have it right here. Give me a second.
After page 70 for the money, is that what you're looking for? Scenarios with the cost?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a second.
No, that's.
I just wanna make sure, I want you to put, so you can put a stick on there. When we talked about middle school.
It's okay.
It's here.
Well, we've got middle on page 15.
Yeah, it might be as early.
Yeah, and on 14, if you go through 14,
Here it is, yeah.
and then you look at, we've put a whole bunch of
13 and
information
14 and
there
15.
about secondary, and so as you go down through 14 on the top of 15, we've got a savings there of about, what is it, 256,000
Minimum.
minimum.
Just how you do 17 grade. See, it's very telling. If you look at page 15, 96,
That's something.
that you have 54 class sections K-5. 52 of them are below your class size goal. Only one is at the goal.
So one of your options
Yeah.
to address Phil's
You-
point
you
is
answered.
you adhere to all of your class size goals, and then you can add up the savings just in the reduction.
Yeah, you answered the question. There's options that we're discussing, but if you go through this report and look at some of the findings.
Suggestions, we
There's
give
other-
ideas
yeah.
of what to do differently.
Okay.
Okay? Don't have to do any of them, but there's enough meat in the suggestions that, oh,
Yeah, okay.
all right?
Find a few $1 million.
Well, okay. So let's do the potential, starting on page 69. Actually, it's page 68. That's where it starts. Preliminary financials. They explain to you by the very nature of closing a building what would, for example, the principal would not be there, the secretary of the principal, a psychologist, a nurse, because every one of your buildings is a psychologist, excuse me, the common sense thing. But, and classroom not classroom teachers automatically, it has to be based on your volume of kids, divided, right, by your class size goal. That determines how many sections you have, all right? We did not, and I know it's the 8th time, and you're very kind to allow this, but no speech, we don't touch any of that. That's your business. All right, you don't necessarily have to reduce, just because you have lower enrollment, you may want to give more speech to kids than you are now with the resource you have. You may want to give more language opportunity using, that's your business. To go there would not be ours, but you could do that. If you said, no, let's scale back even those services to the enrollment we have. That's your business, all right? The other thing is cost avoidance. You just had the building condition survey. You don't have a lot to do, but it adds up. It's like a couple million at one building, $1 million at another, $750,000. So if you're not using that building, not all of that would be cost avoidance. For example, if one of the buildings that you weren't going to use had a roof problem, you'd want to fix the roof because you have the obligation, in our opinion, to protect the asset. It's still owned by your public.
Right.
On the other hand, you would not change the nurse's suite in the building that you're not going to use anymore. Okay? You would make sure the parking lot wasn't falling apart. That wouldn't be cost avoidance. You've got to protect the asset. So for 2 reasons. One, either you might sell it. 3 reasons. Either you might sell it, you might rent it, or 10 years from now, if you kept it that long, you might reopen it. It's got to be ready. You can't have little critters running through it. It's just good diligence. All right. So, what we did to help you, because this got a little, we wanted to make sure, page 69 and 70, there's your staff that you have right now. K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. It's a handy reference. All right? One place, simple. So you know how many staff you have at each category. Got it? All right. That's important. So let's do scenario A on scenario A. If you implemented scenario A, you'd have one principal you would not need because the building is not used. You'd have one secretary, one nurse, one psychologist, one counselor, but only 0.3 librarian because you value having every building have a librarian. One of your buildings only has, in fact, this building only has 0.3. So you'd only reduce by 0.3 because that's all that's there, but you would still have, you value that. That's pretty clear. We learned that. In fact, your staff admired that you, as a board, and previous boards have done that. You believe in library in each of your buildings. So that's why it's 0.3, okay? Because you don't want to reduce, no, you could do it. Not our, you don't have a right to do that. We only took the resource that's in the building. So, if in scenario A, you'd have 878 K5 children. Remember? All ties together. If we assume an average class size for K5 of 19, when I say, gee, Paul, we're at 25 at 3, 4, 5. Conservative. Okay? In our opinion, we have to be conservative at this point in making sure that it's not overly stating savings or understating it. So we're using a conservative figure of average of 19. See why? I mean, it's just the right, in our opinion, it's a diligent thing to do. So you would now have 56 teachers in K5. In this scenario, you would only need 47. You'd have 9 fewer FTE classroom teachers with this scenario, for a total of $764,000 on average. See, you know what on average is, because that's the average. But you see, we'll show you what we do. So the total possible savings for staffing would be $1.2 million. Turn over to the building side. If you didn't use Ontario Elementary, you would not need $161,000 worth of O&M staff. You would not need $71,297 of school lunch staff. Your utilities would go down by 105. Your building supplies would go down by 27. The subtotal is 365. However, you just don't walk away from the building. You've got to make sure there's security. You got to make sure in the winter it's 50 degrees or whatever your architect suggests to you. You need to make sure the boiler is inspected. You need to make sure if it has an elevator that it has a current elevator permit. You have to have it insured. There's a cost. That cost, and that we didn't come up with this. Mathis's team came up with this. So this is you don't know us. You know us, but you don't. You live with these people. They came up with these figures. They're suggesting it would cost $79,650 to caretake that building in an appropriate manner. No grass growing in the, that's my, I have to hang up about that. No grass growing in the parking lot. Oh, I hate that. You know what I mean? So that's what, so you have to minus that out from savings. So there's a cost there. So the total cost, savings potential is between 1.2 million and 1.5 million. You might say, well, where'd you get the lower number? What we did, remember we said earlier, this is an average cost, and you know what happens. First in, first out, or no, last in, first out.
Mm-hmm.
So the potential is there. It could be that higher range, like 84,000 is an elementary FTE. In all likelihood, what we did, we mathematically made it 20% less. Some may say, oh, that's too much to lower it. You know what? We're going to be home. You need to be the heroes of what it turns out to be. If that's too low, good. We've done our job. Once you figure it out, you know, if that's your option, you'll know exactly, and the savings in all likelihood will probably be more. You see where we're going? All right? So there's your range for scenario A. You see where we got it from? Let's go to B.
But
B,
that's just for 1 year, right?
no, it's forever.
No, you still
Per year.
have,
It's
Per
year,
year,
every
per
year.
year.
That's gone. You never pay that again.
Per year.
That's off your budget
per
forever.
year, but then you still have the 80,000, of course, every year to maintain your
Well,
building.
Yeah, but you have all that savings.
That's
It's all in there.
factored in there.
But that doesn't change, that's in there.
So this would be for every single,
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is not a one-time flash in the pan. It's like gone.
well, I know the staff would be, but,
Well, no, everything.
okay.
Except, you're right, there would be, if it's in there, that 80 grand is gonna be in there, it's already
I'm
in there,
thinking
right?
like
It's like at home.
budget-wise.
It's in there. That's why when, the best time to add the swimming pool to the house is when the car loan is up, because we can live with not having a car loan for 1 year until we get the pool, and then we'll go do a car loan again. Same thing here. If it's in there, it's in there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right? Okay. So, let's go to scenario B, which is very similar, right, to A, except it's a different building. And you see the difference in, really, it's the staffing's the same, but the cost of the savings of not using Ontario primary is less. A little smaller building, right? Different, you know, it's not 3 stories. You see why? That's why that's a little less. Make sense? Okay. Let's go to C. Okay, now, use Ontario primary, do not use free will. So you still have 1 principal fewer, 1 secretary fewer, 1 nurse fewer, 1 psychologist fewer, 1 counselor fewer, but only 0.3 librarian because, remember, Oneida, not Oneida, I'm sorry, I live near Oneida. Ontario primary has only 0.3 of a librarian, and you value a full-time librarian in each building. That's why we only minus 0.3. Make sense? Okay. However, to figure out how many classroom sections, we're going to assume 414 K2 students. We know in K2, your class size goal is 19. Notice we're using 18 as an average. See why? Because it's more narrow. We know it's 19, but you really can't use 19. You got to have some kind of flexibility in there. You may get 5 kids move in from Webster, your friend. All right, so you got to have some room. However, in 3 through 5, we know that's 25. Notice we're using 23, conservative.
Okay.
See where these numbers come from?
Yeah.
So, you have 56 teachers now. You would need 23 at K2, at least 21 at 3-5, so you have 12 fewer classrooms, teachers that you would need with this scenario in the elementary. See where the money comes from? Okay? And then the building, you're familiar with that, where that comes from. So in this scenario, you're looking at about 1.4 million to about 1.750 in potential savings. We believe these are conservative. Notice we didn't, remember, we didn't, you know what we didn't touch. I won't go there. But you know what we didn't touch. You may want to look at that with your staff. That's your business. You may not. Let's do scenario D. We're using one fewer schools, one fewer principal, one fewer secretary, one fewer nurse, one fewer psychologist, one fewer counselor, 0.3 librarian. However, in this scenario, you're going to have 710 K4 pupils. We are estimating an average class size of 20. See why? Because most are at 19 except for one grade level. So, but we still have to be conservative. And then 168 pupils in grade 5, and we know that to be 25, but we're using 23. 10% less. Flexibility again. So therefore you have 56 teachers, minus 36 at K4, minus 8 at grade 5. So this one also is 12 teachers. By the way, you know, if you do the math, you'll say, well, gee, Paul, that only comes out to be 11.4. If it's over the 1, it's like kids. You don't have a half a kid. You really don't. You could have a half a teacher, but you know what? You do that. I'm going to round it up. Right? The
Yes.
C word.
Yes, sir.
You can do it. I don't think we have a right to do that. All right? So this one is a savings of, too many dollar mark, is 1,000,004 to 1,000,007. Yes, sir.
All of these estimates, there's no accounting for transportation savings, is there?
No, because that's major. We think it'll be major. And here's why. Because for your folks, your transportation folks, to do what ifs on all 5 scenarios. One, they didn't say this, I'm saying it, we're saying it. They don't have the time and the day to do hard. You've got good software to do that and all that. You could do it. I hope you don't ask them to do all 5. Eventually, we would suggest you get down to 2, whatever. Then that's where you turn to those folks and say, okay, if we did this, present to us how you think this is. Always start with the program, don't start with transportation. Right?
No, I'm just saying.
It's come
this
first.
wasn't accounted
This is the
for, right?
program.
There's additional
How
savings
might
there.
you do this?
Yeah.
How might you do it? Oh, yeah, substantial. Substantial.
Just want to make that.
But
Yep.
you gotta do it in stages. This is a program delivery study with savings.
Oh, I know, we're looking at savings, I just want
Right.
to make sure that
No, it's not in there.
that was still.
Oh, when I asked earlier if this is every year, this is every year, but what would it change going down the line? Would it go up at all or low,
If you give
depending?
somebody a raise, you get, no, it would not go up. It would be, now, if you had
It would
higher
only be
enrollments.
proportional to everything else.
Right, go ahead.
Theoretically, the savings will go up because those teachers who are excised are going to get a raise. So theoretically, each year you would be saving more
It would be proportional.
Okay, all
proportionately.
right.
Now, on the other hand,
Depends on-
which is a good problem, gee, community, we just got 75 new people who moved to the district. First of all, that's America. And even though there's, see, that's why we do conservative. You might say, well, that's a lot of kids. We, in all our years, we have never had 50 kids leave or come in all at one grade level. If you could save money.
Right.
You know what, I'm telling you, it just never happens. They're spread out.
Right.
That's one of the reasons we use lower numbers, because you can absorb without costing more. That's important.
You built in flexibility.
You got to.
So-
You know, it's America, who
Which is the way it
knows?
should be.
Who knows? All right, so let's look at E. Is that where we're at? We're at E. All right, now this ties into how, remember Doug talked to you about your teacher's contract?
Yes.
And this is not, actually, this is a good thing. It's not, this is, the premise here is, look at the bottom. Here's an operational idea from our outsider point of view, how that contract language would work in an implementation way. First of all, it's a 7-hour-a-day with a 30-minute lunch. Right now, your kids and staff get a 40-minute lunch. We're not bean counters. But you multiply 10 minutes times every staff member you have, that's a lot of non-contact time with kids. And any principal, including yours, will say, you know, 30 minutes is enough for kids for lunch. It really is. They have time to talk, but then they get going. So, and we're not trying to be, what, you pain in the neck, Paul and Doug? No. 30 minutes is the lunch. That's what the lunch is. So right now, in your scheduling, it's counted as a period. That's not how it has to be done. You can schedule periods with a 30-minute lunch not counted as a period. Right now, it's counted as a period. That doesn't have to be that way. In fact, go ahead.
Well, no, I think what's important to add is what I originally said. It doesn't have to be that way now. It had to be that way because
Right.
it was written in the language. So it was 40 minutes and it was carried out. It wasn't written specifically in the contract, but the language in the contract said the schedule was carried over from the previous year to the previous year, or to the next year to the next year. So that 40 minutes that was built in there by contract moved forward into the next year, moved forward into the next year. That's why now, again, we come back to that 2015, 2016 that's so important, because as you look at this now, we're saying it could be, as per the contract, 30 minutes. That's the difference. So now you have the potential to make up quite a bit of time there.
So we're looking at a 7, we're suggesting it's a 7-hour day plus 30 minutes for lunch, 1 preparation, one preparation period. And the rest of the time is with kids. Except for, look, you got to have 10, 15 minutes in the morning. Just the reality of it. You want your teachers there with their coats off, smiling, ready to go to meet the kids. That's just reality. And then at the end of the day, a certain amount of time where the buses leave first before cars do. Did I say that okay?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. So you want that. That means, so it's like, but you keep that instructional contact time as broad or as much as you can. So we're suggesting at 7 through 12 that it be how you work with that new language is that a teacher would provide 5 class section assignments plus 1 supervisory assignment, and not necessarily study hall. Right now you're doing something very good. Some of your secondary teachers actually do some AIS instruction with small groups. That's outstanding. Good job. Really. So it's not like supervisory, like standing in the hall, or, that's a waste of talented time, right? Don't get me wrong, security is important, or study halls. They're really working with the AIS kids. That's outstanding. So it would be 5 plus 1, and that supervisor is broad term, and with 1 preparation. Now, you can still do what you're doing. If one school is doing a double loaded period, 2 periods in a row for a class, you can still do all that. One has nothing to do with the other. It's scheduled that way. The software allows you to do that. Okay, you don't have to have what you have now to do what you're doing. You can go to this and still have what you're doing if you want it. Or 6 class assignments and 1 preparation. Now let's be realistic. I'm saying this as an old English teacher. Yeah, I began the business in a small school with a 160 kid load, which you say that to teachers, so they say, are you crazy? That's what it is in a small school, with 5 different preps. Today, no. That's okay. I'm not going to whine about it, and we shouldn't whine about it the other way, because you want people to do good work. But you also have, and I think the best way to describe what we're talking about is, if you go to I will get the page, give me 2 seconds. I'm looking for this.
Oh, the singleton?
Singletons, yes, singleton page. We reported to you, and we will find that page. It's here. It's here.
We're looking for the singleton page, man.
Page 19.
Is that 19? All right, in your school district, thank you. This is always a quandary.
Yeah.
Your class size goal is 25, but there's a real reality in providing a comprehensive high school. You offer International Baccalaureate. Wow. You offer AP English. You offer Gemini English 4. I'm not sure what that is, but evidently it's a upper end.
It's a college level
level
course.
Bingo. Those are your class sizes. There's nothing to be shameful about those class sizes for those higher end courses. But they're not at 25. So how do you continue a comprehensive high school where there are singletons like this, where in all likelihood 8 to 10 or 12 or even 6 is not uncommon in any kind of school district. I don't care if it's here or down the road, you know what I'm saying, or anywhere else. That's not uncommon to have these numbers with these classes. So how do you do it all? Because it's not just a math game of 25 per class. You're offering a comprehensive high school, all right? So this whole concept of, you may have some teachers, like me, an English teacher, 5 sections of English, but I'm teaching a 6th, which happens to be, not that it's any easier, in fact, many ways, but it's professionally satisfying. I might be teaching AP English with only 9 kids in it, where my other classes have 21 or 22 or 23, or even 25. You see how you balance that? So the idea of having 6 assignments is not taking advantage of any staff member. You're an employer, you don't want to take it, you want fairness. But this is how, in a comprehensive high school, yeah, I may have 5 classes of 22, and I'll have 1 of 9, right? So 5 times 22 is 110, I'll have 119 kids. 125 kids for a load for an English teacher is not, it's pretty normal. And with 6 classes, I would have that. So you get the, right, normal core class, and these specialty classes, you're able to provide it. And it's not, you're cost effectively providing it. See how neat that is? So that's why I would suggest we would suggest that look at that, of what that, how we're suggesting that be implemented, or a model of how to look at it. All right? So, what that all means is, if we apply, so you got 2 buildings, so now it's 2 principals, 2 secretaries, 2 nurses, 2 psychologists, 2 counselors, 1.3 librarians, right? You've got to make up for the one you don't have a whole, plus a building, one is gone, one is not there. You'd have 414, that's the same, K-12, K-2 pupils, average class size of 18. You have 64 K-6 teachers. You would need 23 at K-2 and 28 at 3-6. So it'd be 13 teachers K-6 you would not need to have to serve that population and honor your class size goal. Let's look at the secondary. You'd have 100, and we do the math down below. You'd have 1,053 young people in 7 through 12. You see what we did? You would need 46 class sections to teach those 1,023 children in a period. If we assume, notice we're looking at conservative, we're not looking at 6, we're looking at the 5, but we suggest you are able to administer either way, 5 plus 1 or 6. See where we're suggesting? But let's do the minimum of 5. You would need 9.2 English teachers to teach those 1,063 kids, 9.2 math teachers. Now somebody sharp here may say, wait a minute, Paul, everybody has to take English for 4 years, but everybody doesn't have to take math for 4 years. You're right. I'm going to invoke the conservative word, the C word. Okay? Same thing with social studies. Not everybody takes 4 years of social studies. Doesn't matter. Why do you think you do now?
Yeah, they do.
But not the math.
We try to make them have the math.
13.2 science. You might say, wait a minute, why so many more? Well, they're lab
Labs.
courses,
Labs.
guys.
Yeah.
So you got the course, you got the lab. It takes more staffing to do that. And because we're conservative, we added, with no particular purpose, 5 more core teachers for flexibility and added programming. And we get a total of 45.8.
Now,
Right now, let me finish. Right now, at your 7 through 12, you have 53.2 teachers.
but what about your 611s and your 50?
No, that's separate. That's all
It's just a
separate.
whole.
Oh, no, all your special ed staff stays exactly the
Okay.
same.
So this.
Oh, it has to.
Okay, yeah, no, I just didn't.
Well, actually, it could increase, could decrease. That depends on your, you know that. Every August, you have kids moving in, moving out,
I
math
just
tells
didn't
you
know
what's
if you
going
had
on.
that figured in here.
Oh, no,
I just
no.
want to clarify.
Oh, good question. No, that's all, just like the lane, all that
Okay,
stuff
yeah, I
is.
just wanted to make sure
No.
that it wasn't.
So you have 53.27 through 12 teachers now. We're suggesting conservatively 45.8 with, rightly so, added resource for flexibility is in there. And you're still looking at 7.4 fewer secondary teachers.
Does that, core number count the retirees that took the incentive?
Is that,
No,
No.
no,
So
these
that-
are on-staff people you have.
So in
Right now.
So we're gonna lose
So-
a couple of those spots anyhow.
Right.
Well, you always try for attrition.
That's what I
Right,
mean.
you always
Because
try
we
for
get
that,
people
but-
take the
So-
incentive, So that number's gonna be a
So in
little.
Well,
addition
yeah.
to the 9.2 English and math and social studies and 13.2 in science, you're saying 5 more teachers in those courses?
Just flexibility.
Yeah, okay.
Because you may want, the board, you may say, you know, this international baccalaureate is great, you know, it's time to increase the number. You gotta go somewhere, you can't just,
Yeah.
it's there. Or you don't use it, that's your business. But you gotta have resource to make those kind of program decisions as a board, along with the superintendent.
You know, the only number I don't see here is the elimination of the superintendent.
By law, you can't do that, Dennis. Sorry, Dennis. No, can't do it. You can share,
know.
you
We
can
don't want to
share
do
a
it.
superintendent with the district,
We'll
but you
keep the guy
cannot. No, that's one of those law things, Dennis. Can't do it.
Okay, I
Can't
have
do
a
it.
question.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
did not include any special area like you said you were going to. Art, music, all
No.
that.
They're all in there. Exactly what you have now.
Sports, all the same.
All sports, everything, it's all in there.
But you didn't subtract, you know, you
So
didn't,
they
in
didn't
the
take it
core.
out.
They didn't take it out, they just looked
It's
at the
all up
core.
there,
Just
just
core.
like special
Just the
ed.
core.
Okay.
Because that's
those
guided by
are-
your class size values.
Right.
See, the other people you have, science, music, art, that's a program value adjustment you made, like the librarian. We quote you, Commissioner's regulation does not require librarians in elementary grades.
Right.
Does not. Only in secondary. So
But-
you've made
I
a
see.
program decision.
What she's saying though is because you've cut 2 buildings, it would make sense that there would be 2 less PE or 2 less music.
Well,
No, not
not
so much
necess-
because it depends on
Right. There
APE
could
and
be.
all that stuff.
Right.
But I'm talking like technology,
Oh.
art, you know, if we
It's all
have
there.
decreased enrollment, then wouldn't that also stand to have decreased
You could-
enrollment?
could if you
for
wish.
those?
You could look at that and see, but for our sake in looking at the numbers, and again, you know, being conservative, we were just looking at the core. Because the idea too, and you talked about it with your request for the study, you're looking at cost efficiencies, you don't wanna see programs, you know, not
Yeah, but
as
I'm
strong or
wa-
not as many available.
For example, real example, Mallory timers. The old days, you remember the mechanical timers on our washers and dryers before they were digital? Mallory timers was south of here. They went on, they left my community with 400 jobs. Oh my God. So, one of the things we did, we had fewer kids. However, the board, we made a value judgment, real example, that we could have lived with fewer, in this case, science teachers. What we did instead, we took 2 high school science teachers and a half a day each. They became collaborative resources for the K through 6 teachers to teach science. Because most elementary teachers will tell you their strength is not teaching science. Our board, our community, and our staff value science education. Okay? And part of our job is to help people get the tools to do good work. So instead of reducing a science teacher, we assign 2 of them a half day each to work with the elementary science classroom teachers to provide science education. Same thing here. You're absolutely right. You may not need strictly all those art teachers. On the other hand, okay, you may want to, this exists, you may want to start AP drama. I'm not just whistling Dixie here. I don't know. That's your decision to make. You may not. Where you say, no, that sounds nice, but you know what? We really don't need 4 art teachers. We really need only 3. That's your judgment call. We could do numbers, but that becomes a number issue, not a, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Not a program decision issue by our part. We won't go where it's only your work, not ours. Okay? Does that help? Or no?
Yeah,
You sure? Okay.
yeah.
You sure? Get that? Oh, thanks. Technology. There's nothing barring you, like we did with the science, to say, you know what? We got this, got a couple of and there's some realities. Good technology teachers aren't a dime a dozen. Okay? You might think, really don't need all these technology people. Is there a way to enhance elementary education with some of this technology people in the elementary? Do you have to do it? No. Is it commission regulations that you can't do it? No. Or that you can do it? No. You can do it. You're the board. You may want to do that. You may say, well, that's not saving money. Remember what we said earlier? Yes, it's about being cost effective, but it's the program that, could we do more with what we have with our kids and still help our property tax levy, but also make sure our kids have the kind of program that this community has always expected our kids to have, which is competitive with the region as well as the state. That's your philosophical discussion, okay? Does that help? We get excited about this, so thanks for bearing with this. But we really believe in this stuff. It's serving kids, okay? Other questions? You see where the money, Dennis?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's just about becoming more efficient at what we're doing.
Well, and also, yes, there's nothing wrong with helping the tax levy. On the other hand, there's nothing wrong with, we did this a little differently. We actually give more with our kids for the same amount of, money that our taxpayers are already given us. And from our experience, community members eat that up just as well as a lower tax bill. Really, because you're doing more with the money you're already getting. It's okay to reduce the tax a little bit too, but you're also, like this pre-K, that would be interesting, to see what the feeling of your community would be about that. It means about 88 grand more, it really does. On the other hand, 3 hours a day instead of 2.5, the collaboration of curriculum, that coordination, that you're not spending the whole year.
I got the lingo. I'm on.
That everything that's done in pre-K is complementary to what your curriculum is in K. You're not starting over with kids from 5 different areas. It's all one focused attention. Think of this. Think of the extra year and I'm not trying to sell you this, but these are some of the, where your staff is a whole nother year, including staff and principals, you've got new members of the family called pre-K parents. Yeah. That they're part of the school community a whole year before their kids in kindergarten. Wow.
Is there any data on that?
On what?
Having the UPK in the school district is a draw to new parents or parents with younger children?
Is there data? Yeah, I think.
I could pick one of my 5 that's in this town or say, whoa, I got certified teachers at the school getting this much more of a benefit. I would be curious as to see if there's a draw. Or are there not that many places doing it?
Well, you gotta be careful. I mean, you have, your grant is for 81. That equals 2 teachers at 20 per class plus an 8. Okay, you ready for this? You might get a longer wait list, but you have the right to limit, unlike kindergarten and rest. You can't limit that. But pre-K you can limit. But don't be surprised.
I don't like that idea. I always thought that was very unfair.
What?
To have any kind of limit or
well, because it's not a mandated program.
Well, I understand the reasons, but I just think that it's totally unfair.
Well, then convince your colleagues that, you know what? They said 88 grand. You know what? Let's make it 1 more teacher, 1 more aide, so we can
Accommodate
provide
everybody.
120 slots. You're the board. And you still, in other words, from the money you save somewhere else, you're actually expanding program for a segment of your community you think needs attention. There you go.
Well, it may pay in the long
Okay.
run with less kids needing reading recovery and all that
Possibly.
other stuff.
Possibly.
You know, AIS, all
But again, what's neat about it is it's not mandatory, so if you're not pushing those parents who don't believe they should come that early.
Right.
That's okay, because they stay home. We're working in Uniondale. They want pre-K for all 600 4-year-olds. We've recommended to them, we didn't say no, we said here's what it would take to do 100%, but from our experience, a goal of 70% is realistic. Because no matter how wonderful it is, and the kids get a head start, and I use head start, a beginning, there are parents out there who believe, no, it's too early, and they won't go. That's their right. It's America. That's their right. Okay? So
And there's parents who have a full-time job with daycare provided right in where they work, And that's where they're, it's
That's
gonna
the way it
stay.
goes. Well, this has been fun, but you see where it's all about program delivery, what your vision is for the program, and yes, it's about, can we do better and use, even though we're doing okay, but can we even do better, more cost effective with the resources we have? And we say, probably there'll be pushback from staff, and that's okay, we're guest outsiders. Often we'll say, look, it's public money. And it's emotional. It is emotional, as it should be. You're an employer, and you work other places, you would hope your employer would be, what's the word? Empathetic, not anti, but it's reality. You don't have the clients, and you have too much capacity. You didn't create that. The previous board didn't create that. Our culture is changing. People aren't having as many children. It is what it is. Okay? Right? It doesn't help me. I mean, there's nobody did anything wrong.
Right.
Come help us
Nobody did anything
look
wrong.
at this data and you have your input.
Well, that's
We
it.
have our groups. right?
Yeah. Nobody did anything wrong.
Paul, is there a formula for high school counselors or middle school counselors? So many per, if you have 800 kids,
You want to answer that?
you should
Yeah,
have.
there's guidelines for it, and it's, I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, it's crazy what the guidelines are. But I wanna say it might be 1 to 200, something like that. I'd have to go back and see, but what the official recommendations are don't make sense when you know and see what guidance counselors do. But I think it may be 1 to 200 to tell you the truth.
But also,
It's high.
But also, when you held up the mirror, you have instituted something called a graduation credit coordinator or something. So you've kind of, in the past, you've addressed that somehow. Like, for example, in the study, we're suggesting you may want to, okay, it's wonderful, you believe in a psychologist per building. You may want to look at that differently. Doug referred to it in this meeting or the other meeting. You may want to look at, let's look at what psychologists do. You may want to go to differentiated staffing. For example, you can hire psychometricians who are expert in providing the testing to allow the psychologist to do what they're most talented in, and that's working with children one-on-one, as opposed to sitting there administering one of these tests. So you could possibly go to 2 and 2 psychology, or 3 and 2, and use psychometricians who happen to be a less costly FTE than a psychologist.
A lot of psychs spend their whole day doing testing based upon IEP
Right.
requirements.
And
They're doing that all day, and they're not even available
For
working
kids.
with
Right.
kids with crisis.
But a psychometrician, that's what a psychometrician does. Testing, that's what they do. So if you looked at the job differently, right? It's like, you don't put a master mechanic changing the oil in my car.
Right.
You put that person doing my transmission,
We hope.
right? Well, we hope. Oh, God, we hope. No, I'm not trying to be facetious, but
Right.
there are other models out there. I mean, when you go to the doctor, who takes your blood pressure, who takes your EKG and all that? Probably not your internist. Probably not, right? Professional model, it's similar. Other professions do this all the time. Is it hurting you as a client? I don't think so.
Do they have you want to talk focus group?
Can we do a focus group?
Yeah.
No decisions tonight. We'd like to go through what this means. The purpose of creating community focus group is to provide representation for all residents, taxpayers, stakeholders of the school district. Okay? What we do, Doug and I are the outside guests that we host this and we implement this. And what it is, it's a scheduled meeting. It's carefully structured in time, not to listen to us. We do very little anything except help them listen and talk with each other. What their job is, we schedule it, it can be on a Saturday from 8:30 to 2:30, or in this case, it could be 6 to 10 or 6 to 9:30, whatever you think is best for your community. Like a weekday, like from 6 to 9:30, 6 to 10, or if you think a Saturday from 8:30 to 2:30 works, we're open to that. It's got to meet what's best for your community. What they do is spend the time together and analyze the various scenarios with a focus on, are there other opportunities and challenges that the study did not identify? That's what they do for all that time. And at the end of their work, we have them rank order the different scenarios. It's not a vote, it's not a recommendation. They rank order them from what their perception individually of which scenarios might be best for kids. That's exactly what the question is. And it's not a vote. It's not any of that. You cannot take away any, sorry guys, in the end, it's you guys have to make a decision, not some focus group. All right? Okay. Typically, we would recommend for your district of between 30 and 36 community members. These are people who volunteer, who apply to be considered by you to be appointed to the focus group. That's important. It's not open door, like, come on in! No, no, no. Because then we won't get the diversity.
Right.
So it's a real technique. PR firms on Madison Avenue do this for products, and it costs $200,000 to find out if you like speckled toothpaste or the other one. Not to be facetious, this is more important. So this is a real technique of listening to the public and perceptions and documenting it, okay? So we would recommend, we're giving you some ideas. The following categories: preschool parents, children of preschool children, elementary parents, secondary parents, empty nesters. I'm on page 1. Seniors who are retired, business persons, chamber of commerce people, whoever you think these categories, if you collected them, would be a microcosm of your community. That's key. You do it. We don't choose. We don't do anything. You do it. But we encourage. The more work you put into making sure this group is truly a microcosm of your community, the better the validity and credibility of the results you get from this group. Okay?
And we'll give you,
yeah.
we'll go ahead and give you documents that you can use and,
That we do here.
and that are in here that are, you're asking people to apply to be considered on this group. On the next page, there's just it's a little clearer to see it, the breakdown of who we're looking for. And you can see, in this case, we're very prescriptive. We tend not to be very prescriptive, obviously, in other parts of the study. We're very prescriptive here based upon our experience. But you can see that the makeup, the composition of the team is predominantly community-based. You notice that there's very few staff that's here because we feel that it's extremely important. They have to be residents of the community, and it's mostly community people, so that as they're reviewing these scenarios, your community does not see it as loaded with staff people.
Right.
Because oftentimes they'll say, well, they want this or that. And we also, you'll see where we put this in gray. We learned this the hard way. We did a focus group one time in the capital region, and we had a great makeup of people, and we had a wonderful group, and we got going with it. And I guess we were in maybe there's, I forget what part of it we were doing. And a guy pulled us aside, and he said, look, I just want you to know, there's only supposed to be X number of school staff, but see that person and 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 that person, her husband, she's a realtor, her husband's the assistant principal in the middle school. See that guy? His wife teaches at 3rd grade. See this guy? And so they all had, it ended up with, they all were basically school staff on the committee. They loaded the committee on us, and these two groups.
Well, validity is not there.
We didn't catch it. So that's why what we did here, we made it very prescriptive as far as what we're looking for with this. And then what we're asking you to do when you look at the different members, what we put out is what we see as successful members. It's really important that you reach out to people, and as you gather applications, that you think of people who really are good listeners. People who will talk about ideas, people who will listen, people who will share accurately what they think about the different scenarios, so that you can really get this good cross-section of ideas from these community people about what they think about the scenarios.
And it's all public. For example, say you advertise publicly, could be in your newsletter, plus an article and all that, and say you get nobody who meets the criteria of business people. Because you advertise publicly, it's okay, as you look at the board, looks at, gee, we don't have anybody from the business community. And we have businesses. It's okay to reach out, not to say, look, we're doing this focus group, we have nobody from our business community who's volunteered. Would you seriously, notice what I'm saying, would you please consider to volunteer? It's a one-day thing. We need a perspective of business folks. Would you consider volunteering to be considered? And then walk away. You hear what I mean?
Paula,
And it's okay to have curmudgeons. It doesn't matter, as long as they meet the criteria. Got it?
the one thing I don't see on here is young people with no children,
Yep.
Yeah,
There's
they're-
two under the age of 30 who are unmarried.
unmarried.
Yeah.
But what about a couple that are married that do not have children yet?
I noticed it wasn't on there too, by the way.
Go ahead. If you have a lot of those.
Because
go ahead.
those are the people that
Go
would
ahead.
potentially have children. What do
sure.
they want in our,
Again.
what do they want for us?
Then do that. If we push that. You make sure it really is representative of your community. If you believe that's a major segment, then make sure it's there.
Well,
But
we
notice
hope so.
all staff, and by the way, it's not just teaching staff, we have support staff here. They must be residents of the district.
Right.
And at those numbers. So there's a significant percentage of the total group, but it's a clear minority, as Doug said, of the focus group that are staff members. They have a vested interest. But you know what removes that from other people? There may be a fifth grade teacher, but they're a taxpayer too. That raises their credibility and validity with other people. There's deep respect there, 'cause they're a taxpayer too. But you don't now you might say, well, gee, the union president, this happened to us. Well, the union president's not a superintendent didn't come and say, well, the union president, taxpayer says, yeah, well, that's the way it goes. The answer's no. You must have other staff who can be good stakeholders for that grade level.
How do we pick the people? I mean.
Well, Doug, we gave you some
Next
examples.
page.
Oh, okay.
Here's some real tools that other superintendents and other boards have created.
There's the letter, Dennis, on page 4.
Right.
This is a letter that could go from the board. This is where you're encouraging specific people to please apply. We didn't want you to have to spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel. So here, we've got it for you. Adapt it however you want. And so hopefully what you're gonna do is you're gonna get, I think you'll get a pretty good response from this. Typically, we see that there's, people want to be involved with this particular group. So there's your letter that can go out. As Paul mentioned, if you do come short in a particular group, reach
Well,
out.
when I say pick, what I meant if you got an overabundance of people coming
That's
in,
the-
how do you break it down?
That's your job as a board,
That's
and
what
with
you'll-
your superintendent.
Yeah.
You guys,
Who can best represent your community?
you'll talk it
So
through.
if you look at page 6,
Yep.
here's a very simple application. Very simple. Actually, I like this one. Why are you interested in serving the community? What strengths would you bring? What part of your community's cross-section could do? Who do you represent? What have you done in the school before this? That was important for this
This was
board.
10 times, right?
No,
Wasn't it?
not this one, not page 6,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Okay? So there's an example. The next one is Kenton's, which is very minute.
Yeah.
In fact, there are some things here that they have a check mark, you want employed. That was important for that board. I never have written it. We didn't write these.
Right.
It's the board's up. But you see how each board looks at it differently? And that's your right to. I never would have asked that. I'm not sure why.
But this just.
But they did. That's their business.
But they also had a huge number. We had 84 people on that. I think it was.
You do understand, because this is a district that in the end, they closed 4 elementary.
They've had a lot of
Yeah.
things happen in that
Okay.
district.
Yep.
Anyway, but these are examples.
There's.
Create a new one, as long as it clearly gets you the information. We gave you some sample news releases. Here's one, Mark Montanaro, great superintendent, retired. It's a sample of how you write to the focus group members, to say, gee, thank you, but we had so many people, we appreciate it, not everybody could be there. It is a public meeting though, but we send a letter out, you'll see, there's a news release. People are welcome to come. In fact, we will encourage that you and your administrative team come and sit there. You're not gonna have any role. And if you try to have a role, I'm telling you up front, politely,
Shut up.
probably, I'm the bad guy, say, go sit there and have a cup of coffee. I won't say it that, I'll say it very politely, but no, you're there to listen and observe. You're still being state people.
And that goes for the people who
Who come
applied,
visit.
and the people who applied didn't get picked, they can certainly still come.
Oh,
and
have
serve.
to come and listen, but they can't participate.
Right.
It's only the focus group.
Yep.
Because that's it's a tool, it's a real scientific tool. all
I
right?
think the board should stay out of it because it might
Well,
be
you are,
influence.
right,
Well,
but
but-
the
No, I
coming and
mean,
listening,
stay out of the room.
well,
No.
the public likes to
Gotta
see
hear
that
what they
you're
wanna-
listening and seeing, and you're gonna learn a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna learn a
We
lot.
don't get a big glass, two-way mirror?
That's reading recovery, no.
Because what's funny sometimes is what you think somebody will feel, sometimes they
right.
really surprise you and
Yeah.
are
So-
different.
And we organize it all. What we don't do is choose, and we cheerlead, we give you guidance, we give you tools. The real work in this is making sure that it's a transparent invitation of your total community, and that you meet, that you can honestly look at each other. Yes, this group of 30, 36, you know what, you want 42, go ahead. Okay, try to get at least 30 for this size district. But you know, if it comes out to be 48,
Doesn't
Fine.
We're fine.
that's okay. We've done it up with 80 people.
84.
84, very large district. So it's immaterial, but as long as they truly are representative and the staff segment are in these proportions, cannot,
You gotta really watch
you've
More.
gotta watch that, because you know what, I'm telling you what they do.
Well,
They come and
especially,
start counting.
especially in
Who's here?
your sense, because of the difficult situations you're dealing with,
Yeah.
there's going to be
Job
a lot of talk from
No,
the
I get it.
staff of what really, as you know, have really wanted to get on this group, so it's something we'll just
Right.
have to watch.
You gotta be representative, but not overly.
Can you just give us a 30-second synopsis of what that day looks like for the people? Like, what do you give them?
Well, they start at 8:30, there's actually like a workbook. Immediately, they, first of all, Doug handles,
From this, we'll do a little welcoming activity, and one of the things that we want to find out that helps us, and it's great for you as you're listening to it. What we ask them to do is that we
very quickly.
very
Doesn't take
quickly
long.
to get in groups of two, and
We
then
pre-assign the groups, by the way.
as you go around, and we're gonna ask you to get information. Introduce the person, what part of the district they're from, the constituency they represent, and why did they wanna be on the committee. So immediately what we find out is who the person is, who they represent, why they wanna be there. So it's great information, and we do it in a fun way that they introduce each other. So literally within minutes of them not knowing these two guys, they're just talking like
They're
crazy, working, and we get them right into it, because we don't do the directed talk very much throughout the
And there's
day.
something
So
about
that's-
someone
that's
standing
the
up
start.
in front of their peers, which is residents, fellow residents, saying, I'll introduce Jeremy. Jeremy lives in this part of the district, he has 3 kids, and the reason he's here, did I do okay?
Yeah, so far.
I have 3 kids. Hey, anyway, and he's here because, yes, he's got 1 or 2 gonna retire, graduate, but still got 1 to go through the system, and he expects to live here and have his grandchildren, and he really wants to be part of the long-range planning.
That's the kind of thing that.
For someone who's appeared to say that because Jeremy said it to them, it becomes a public statement of why they're there. Not so much for us, it's for in front of everybody. Now, some will say, I'm here because I'm really concerned about how much money we're spending, and usually they'll go one step further. I just want to make sure what we're spending is really for kids. That's wonderful. But some will say, and that's okay, that's all right, nothing wrong, we all, right, it's America, taxes. But it's in front of their own fellow residents. We're nobody, we're guests, we're nobody. But to have that said in front of people, that lets it be known that this is why we're here, and we're working together for 6 hours. So we do that, and then we pre-assign, not because we know the people, because there'll be subgroups that are reflective of the larger stakeholder group. For example, there'll be maybe 2 empty nesters, somebody from K-5, parent, 7-12 parent, a K-5 staff. See, microcosms. Those become smaller discussion groups. So we might have up to 4. In this case, we might have 5 because there are 5 scenarios. We'll see how many you give us. So for the first 45 minutes, they're not yellow birds and whatever, but they're colors like yellow, green. They'll spend 45 minutes together analyzing and discussing scenario A and looking at the opportunities and challenges. And the question is this, that's the work they're doing. Are there other opportunities and challenges not listed that ought to be listed for scenario A? They do that. Then group A and B get together and they share, this is what we saw in A, and they share, this is what we saw in B, and they discuss it intergroup. See how it goes? It's building upon, not us, them. And if there are opportunities and challenges that they identify on yellow paper, yellow placard, very simple, not a high tech. They'll write what that, on the yellow, what the challenge is that they don't see, and they'll write on green. And literally, they'll put it up on the wall, so all to see. Nobody, everybody leaves with all the information before, nothing is, everything's done when they go. You see everything.
What it does is that we get the real, on the ground feelings of what people think about the opportunities and challenges of each one. We listed them, you know, to start with from our perspective, but now you're going to get your community residents who are saying, this is real, this is what I see as the opportunity, here's the challenge, and then they're all
and some who might be repetitive, but they're repetitive in their own words. They're included in the report. It doesn't matter. Like we said it one way, they might restate it, but in their words, good. Because we can honestly say this is how they said it. Better their words than ours. We're nobody. Okay? Some would be, you would. We've seen that, but that's okay. Yeah. And then there's lunch, by the way, you provide lunch, nothing fancy, and we get them to sign in so it meets the comptroller's guidelines to provide food for your public. No, really, okay, nothing fancy. And then they work, it's a working lunch, right through, and then we end the day with them doing, we have a particular technique of how they individually rank order. It's not the squeaky wheel, it's not the loudest mouth. We have a technique where each individual alone, it's not a group activity, where they will rank order the items. And it's a way to composite, and it's very accurate, okay, of what the group as a whole, how they looked at it as a whole rank ordered. And that's how we end the day, where they've rank ordered. So you will get, along with your community, a rank order, this microcosm of your community. Did all this work, they identified other things that you should consider, you, plural, and they've rank ordered the item with the question, which, rank order these according to what you think are the scenarios that would serve children the best. And you'll have that, but it's not a vote. Often we'll find, we've never found a board that couldn't live with the top 2 or 3. That's usually what you're, all right? I'm serious, not ever, you could be the first. You heard what I'm getting at? In other words, this is not some black hole that you're going down like, wait a minute here, yeah, I'm the board, we gotta if you, which we assume you are, you are representative of your community, you got elected. So if you, that's why the work you do in the stakeholder identification, if you think about it, will be reflective of how you got here. It works that way. So, and people know there that the next step is now the board will, we tell them, there will probably be public meetings, you'll have to decide how you want to do that, you might have meetings at each of the elementary buildings, or there are things you can do, we'll write that out for you. Sometimes boards will say, you know what, we've looked at, thank you everybody, we've looked at these, out of these 5, we think these 2 are the best. So over the next 2 months, we're gonna have a series, part of the board meeting is we want to have open discussion about these 2 options. Well, wait a minute, what do people like the others? But you see, you've got the data to show that a microcosm of the community really focused in on these, you see where, okay? It's not you, it's like you building on this data. And that you could do, you could have meetings like that, or like however you do budget, maybe you go out to the different buildings, or you go to the fire hall, or you could do that, whatever you want. What do you normally do in your culture on an important issue? To get even more information. And then what's normally done, you pick an option that, you know, we think we're really going to implement this. Thanks everybody, we've listened again. This seems to be the option we're going to pursue. That's when you might want to. By the way, the life of this focus group is only for 1 day, but because of the work you put into it, the real life of that committee is at least for a year. No, of that group. You may want to, in fact, we encourage you. You might want to invite them in for a cup of coffee and cookies. We want to thank you. And by the way, we really looked at this. We kind of think these 2 out of the top 3, what you came up with, are the best. Talk to us. We saw what you did. The guys wrote it down, but we want to listen some more. Do that, all right? Or if you have another need, say something terrible happened in the district where you need some advice. You did all that work. I hope nothing happens like that, but say, I don't know, something happened. You got a quick way, Mathis, to get a real microcosm of your district together real quick. Either you as the chief or with the board to talk about something. Could be the next budget season. I don't know. So there's okay? It's something that has at least a shelf life for a year of these people, and sometimes longer. You did all that work, all right?
Well, they end up, in what we've seen with a lot of districts, they end up being sources of key communicators, because when they come.
And candidates for the board. True story. Honest to God, I can't lie to
That's
you.
true.
I'm not trying to, just be honest with
So
you.
when they come, what we do is we give them documents and resources, you know, the enrollment, the demographics, they get a copy of the study. So they get all this information, then over the course of 6 hours, in effect, they become mini experts into this process that you're going through. So then, you know, as you look at what you're dealing with, you may be able to tap into groups of people that are going to have a lot of information that were invested in this process. And typically what we find is they would like to continue in some way, shape, form, or another of being supportive and working through the process. Because what they end up seeing, which is probably one of the most important things for you, they end up seeing the process as data-driven and transparent. So all the things that you're doing, talk to them about, we want it open, we want it transparent. They see it in reality. They've been part of a process to be invited into this focus group. They're given all this data and information. They're given time to work on it. They see the report that we put together that goes through that supports all of the things that they've talked about and written, their rank ordering. They see all of that and they really understand that it's real and that it's useful to the board, and many of them really do want to continue.
And they know their role is advisory. You know that. You've all gone to state board meetings where, you know, make sure your committee knows what their role is and all that. We make sure they know that in a very polite, diplomatic way. And there's no question about what their role is. They're not making decisions. They're advisory, and they're giving a perspective of resident taxpayers to these ideas to help the board and frankly themselves and the rest of the community to maybe, it's always maybe, might focus in on one. Okay? Because in the end, you might say, you know what? Let's just cut where we can with operating program, and let's just live with it. Well, you can do that, but I think the data is pretty convincing that probably you're gonna meet the mountain somewhere, because your enrollment unfortunately looks like it's continually going down. But that's okay, it's your business. You can do whatever you want.
We tell Matt has shared with us, you're thinking of September?
Yes, September,
along those
October
lines.
for the focus
Yeah.
group, so
Okay.
that we can do it when people get back
Yeah,
from
yeah,
vacation.
Okay,
What
great.
I would do though is, do it as early in the year, because in all likelihood,
Yes.
you're gonna want, if you do it in September, no later than October, it still allows you October, November, December, January, and probably part of February, to do more listening, more discussion, because in all likelihood, there might be an option or a subset of an option you're gonna wanna institute in 2017, 18. You see why? Gotta have, and Mathis is not a superintendent, but if somebody asks me, what did you learn, what could you do differently as a new superintendent? Mathis is not new, is that, and boards sometimes make the same mistake, you don't give yourself enough time with your community. Really. Unless the roof is falling in, or unless it's a morals issue, it's okay to take a little time. Okay? It really is. But this timeline you may not want for 17, I'm not pushing that, but if you did, do the focus, because that becomes the final tool we help you with, but that gives you enough time without somebody feeling that, oh, they're shotgunning it, shoot from the hip. You know the terms. You got plenty of time where that's not gonna happen. No, really, see why? You got plenty of time. Okay? You've been great. I hope this has helped.
Thank you.
That's been very helpful.
Our minds are swimming, at least mine.
Well, it is, but that's okay. Don't, go, you're gonna get the study. Please, you can certainly take this home. There are some errors in there that we've learned.
You want these back?
No.
No,
No.
we try,
Oh,
but it's
okay.
not a public document.
Right.
But a lot of it's gonna be the same, so if you wanna, like tonight, if it's a repeat on, Jimmy Farrow, you wanna go ahead, start using the data.
We thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Okay.